Good evening, everybody. My name is Mayor Stewart, and I would call this regular meeting of the City Council. We are also acting as the Public Financing Authority Board of Directors later today. So will Council Member Francis lead the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. City Attorney, can you report out from the closed session from yesterday?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As there were no members of the public, I reported out immediately following the session to the city clerk. But yes, the city council did meet in closed session yesterday evening at 5:30 on one matter of anticipated litigation, which was noted on the agenda. That is related to a California Voting Rights Act district elections demand received from Kevin Shankman on behalf of the Southwest Voter Education Project. And there was no reportable action taken on that matter.
Great, thank you so much. We have some exciting things as typical with the beginning of the agenda, but before we do that, we have some really sad news today, actually in the last few days, and I think I've heard that death comes in threes. On Sunday, there was a loss of someone at the Cal Poly University. On Monday, Mayor Steve Martin from Paso Robles passed away, and then just a personal friend passed away, and just wanted to take a moment of silence. Thank you. All right, so next we get to do the fun thing, the 40th anniversary of the Downtown Farmers Market Proclamation. And I see we have the downtown ready for our Downtown Association. I'll go ahead and read the proclamation, and then I'll come down to see Bettina Swigger, the Executive Director, and give her the proclamation and give her 3 minutes to chat about the anniversary. So whereas the Downtown Slow Farmers Market was established in 1983 as a program to support the Downtown Business Association members and encourage visitation to downtown, the Downtown Slow Farmers Market has established itself as a premier tourist destination and brings thousands of guests to downtown every Thursday night. The Downtown Slow Farmers Market provides a platform for local farmers, artisans, small businesses, and nonprofit and civic organizations to sell their products and communicate their value directly to the community, thus supporting the economy, fostering entrepreneurship, and keeping money circulating within the region. The Downtown Slow Farmers Market provides access to fresh, locally grown produce, serves as a vibrant, diverse, and welcoming gathering space where people can socialize, interact with neighbors, and foster a sense of community. The Downtown Slow Farmers Market has distributed over $65,000 in benefits in the past 2 years alone as part of the EBT CalFresh Food Access Program, thus allowing those experiencing food insecurity to have access to nutritious and healthier food options. The Downtown Slow Farmers Market has partnered with Glean Slow, who collects donated produce from farmers every Thursday, totaling 26,354 pounds in the past 2 years alone. And that has been redistributed into the community to those experiencing food insecurity. Whereas in 2023, the Downtown Slow Farmers Market is celebrating its 40th anniversary of enhancing the quality of life in downtown San Luis Obispo by promoting local businesses, healthy lifestyles, and community engagement, contributing to the overall vibrancy and character of downtown and the city at large. Now, therefore, I, Erica A. Stewart, Mayor of the City of San Luis Obispo, on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby recognize the Downtown Slow Farmers Market on its 40th anniversary and its continuing valuable role within the community.
Thank you so much, Mayor Stewart. This is a very exciting time for us. Do a little, excellent.
Hi, how are you?
On behalf of Downtown SLO, I'd like to thank Mayor Stewart and the council for this proclamation and recognition. We officially kicked off our 40th anniversary season with a special block party celebration on July 6th, but we're going to be celebrating all year long. And I want to acknowledge a very special guest we have here tonight, Frank Defoe, who was the first administrator of the Downtown Business Association and was responsible for starting the farmers market back in 1983. We also have a wonderful team of people. There are thousands of people who've worked in the market over the 40 years, but right now at this particular slice in time, I want to especially thank our program director, Whitney Cheney, who runs the show on Thursday nights and does a wonderful job. We have our fundraising director, we have our marketing and communications coordinator, and our membership and community engagement coordinator here tonight. We work so hard every Thursday to put this together, and we couldn't do it without the help of the city staff. So to Public Works and Streets, thank you for deploying the barricades and closing the streets every single Thursday. To the fire department, thanks for bringing the apparatus to Choro Street for the kids to climb around and play on. To the police department for the dedicated walking beat at the market. And to the economic and tourism department for sharing our story as part of the reason that you should come to SLO and extend your weekend by coming on Thursday instead of on Friday. And also why it's a great idea to open a business downtown. So it's always thrilling to bring someone to the market for the first time. And many cities say, gosh, we wish we could do this just once. And we say, well, we do it every Thursday. And then they say, oh, just during the summer, right? And we say, nope, all year round. That's how we roll here in SLO. And I want to just take a moment to remind people about this beloved Higuera tradition and how it supports small business people in all communities. We really believe that it is a welcoming gathering place for people, whether you're an atheist, a Christian, whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, whether you're with a nonprofit or you're trying to sell goods. It really is a place for all of us to come together. So thank you for 40 years. Thank you for starting this, Frank. And we'll see you on Thursday night. Thank you for being here.
I have to say a very quick story. I met someone this weekend who had their mother come into town. They said, this town is just so beautiful you live in. Even the farmer's market, even the things that stop everyone, the barriers, they're beautiful, these art murals. Wow. So just want to tell you that even that strange little tiny detail made someone just so thrilled to be in our town. So thank you so much. Next, we get to say hello and welcome to Whitney McDonald, the new Assistant City Manager. I believe Derek Johnson will be introducing you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I'm really excited tonight to have Whitney McDonald join our team as the city's next Assistant City Manager. She comes to our city from one of our sister cities down in southern part of San Luis Obispo County, Arroyo Grande. She's joined here tonight by her husband, Dave, and her children, Liam and Nate. I believe they're in the back of the room. And she will oversee the community services group. And just by way of background, that includes the Public Works Department, utilities, community development, and park recreation. Whitney comes to us with having had a tremendous amount of experience in the public sector or working for the public sector. She began her career as an attorney, advising a variety of different cities, eventually found her way to San Luis Obispo County and served as county council before initially joining the city of Arroyo Grande as a community development director and then be appointed as the city manager back in 2020. We're really excited in the role that Whitney is going to play in implementing the city's strategic vision, the community's strategic vision, and she'll work closely with our stakeholders and a variety of community partners to really, I think, play out, the comments, Mayor, that you just provided, which is we strive to have a clean, safe, and beautiful city. And so with that, Whitney, if you want to step a little closer, let me pin you, and then you'll have a couple words to say for the city council. And then, I think the city clerk's going to come over and administer the oath, and then you'll have a few words to say for the council.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. I, Whitney McDonald,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
I furthermore agree
I furthermore agree
to abide by the rules,
to abide by the rules,
regulations, and laws
regulations, and laws
of the City of San Luis Obispo.
of the City of San Luis Obispo.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I did that without making a huge blunder. It's now just up to me to make that blunder right now. But I'm just incredibly honored and very excited to be here with you all and with the community. And thank you to my family for coming as well and supporting me through all the various parts of my career. As City Manager Johnson mentioned, I really have found my place in public service. It means a great deal to me and to my family, and I'm just that great sense of honor to join you all and bring that sense of purpose and public service to this community and to carry out the work that you have started and are well into, and to do everything that I can to bring that vision that you've all put out there into fruition in partnership with the community and all of the stakeholders. San Luis Obispo is a real beacon and leader in our region, and so it really is a true honor to be here, and I can't wait to get to work and do all these amazing things together and with the team that you all have assembled. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And, you know, I'll just say publicly, City of Rio Grande, we are sorry, but thank you. So next we have City Manager Derek Johnson will present a report. And before you do that, I am hoping that you will make sure that you will include Chief Scott in giving us a little update about the people holding the Nazi signs in our community and in our city specifically. For those who haven't seen it, if they haven't, which would be odd because the media continues to put their banner with their website on the front page. But there have been some people who've come into our community with white supremacist messages, and that is not what our community stands for. We stand for a community that wants to be welcoming to everybody and have everybody feel comfortable to be here. And obviously there's free speech, and we will never stop someone's free speech. And at the same time, the pain that causes people is really disturbing. And I'm hoping that you can give us some updates around that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. We'll conclude today's presentation. I've asked Chief Scott to come up, and he'll provide an update to the council at the conclusion of my report. I'm going to start off with just an update. I just want to just indulge and appreciate the community's patience. There is a lot of investment that's happening right now in your city. And we are an old city. Just to try to remind everyone that we're the 16th oldest city in the state of California. And we have a lot of old infrastructure, and a lot of that old infrastructure is being replaced and needs to be replaced. And so some of the ongoing and upcoming construction projects, we have the North Choro Greenway projects, and this summer we have the 2023 arterials paving project, which is nearly $10 million worth of investment. We have a significant amount of investment that's happening through our funding from the Community Development Block Grant, which is replacing a fair amount of curb ramps to make sure that we're providing accessibility for all of our residents. And last but not least, but we're adding a new park on North Broad Street. And so a lot of these projects you can learn about by subscribing to the city's Facebook or Instagram page. There you'll find updates in what is called our Slow in Motion communication effort. And really the projects that you'll see really starting to ramp up soon is the 2023 arterials paving project and some curb ramp improvements on Augusta Street. All of these projects represent over $15 million in investments in our community, and they really enhance several goals, which are to provide maintenance and rehabilitation to damaged pavement, to extend the life and of existing pavement services, as I mentioned, to provide additional access, and to also provide safety access for walking and bicycling. And this is important for our city because we have seen a disturbing trend in the last couple of years where we've seen a record number of unfortunate deaths to both pedestrian and cyclists. And last, the park on North Broad Street fulfills a general plan goal and a goal for the council that was identified in our Parks and Recreation blueprint. I would encourage everyone to go to the Slow in Motion website. You can learn about those projects in the various different phases. Some upcoming streets in particular that I want to make residents aware about that will be coming up in the next couple months is Choro Street, which is under heavy construction right now, and I'll talk about that more in just a moment. Augusta Street from Bishop to San Marcos. Johnson Avenue, we have a significant amount of pavement patch repairs. California Boulevard from Mill to Monterey. Orcutt Street, the entire stretch from Laurel to Johnson. Funston and Lawton intersection, and then Monterey Street all the way from Santa Rosa to California. So a significant amount of improvements that are happening there. So as I go to the next slide, the 2-week look ahead is the arterial projects will begin construction that have begun construction, and the asphalt repairs on Johnson Avenue will be completed by August 16th, which we need to get done before the start of the new school year. After completing the work on Johnson, our paving crews will move over to Orcutt Road and will begin the reconstruction of Laurel to Fernwood. And then work in this area includes full depth replacement of the existing asphalt pavement. So unlike the past, it's not slurry seal. We need to do a full reconstruction of the road. That's what you're seeing today out on Choro Street. It is quite, intrusive, and we appreciate everyone's patience, but it is the right type of investment that's needed given the age of the infrastructure. Paving operations on Loma Court are expected to take place from August 25th to the 26th, and after the completion of Orcutt Road, and include a full depth replacement as well of the existing pavement. And so we really encourage everyone to go to the Slow in Motion. If you have questions about what's happening at any of these projects, you can always email slowinmotion@slowcity.org, or you can reach us, you can email or call us at 805-783-7887. And again, that website is slowcity.org/slowinmotion. On to some other construction projects. We're making progress on our pedestrian crossing beacons, and these 4 of them were installed in late July, and they're at Johnson, Sydney, South and King, and Osos and Islay, and Broad and Islay. These are facilities that are really designed to generate awareness for pedestrians that are crossing significant roadway intersections where there's really no controlled stops. And so our effort will include education, and so our education campaign is already out there, and it's to reduce conflicts at these new crosswalks, particularly as school starts on August 17th. We're spreading the messaging through various channels that include the city website and social media, Parent Square at Hawthorne and Sinsheimer Elementary Schools, and that you'll see some message boards for drivers approaching the crosswalks. If you're interested in learning more about these rapid flashing beacons, you can go to www.slowcity.org/ RRFB. And so there will be an enforcement component, and so our police department will be supplementing the education efforts with targeted enforcement on the first day of school. And there is a planned ribbon cutting ceremony on Thursday, August 31st at 3:30 p.m. at the King and South intersection, because that's an important intersection and a crossway over to Hawthorne Elementary School. Moving forward with one of our significant construction projects, and this is the Choro Street construction project. The scope of this work includes the complete sidewalk replacement on both sides of the street. It includes full street reconstruction, storm drain, and sewer replacement. And so the full closure was anticipated to be 3 weeks, but as we got in there, it's going to extend for another week. And so we're estimated to complete this work by the end of August. Pedestrian access through the site has been maintained on one side during the duration of the work, and obviously vehicle traffic, except for those driveways immediately requiring access, has been detoured to adjacent blocks. And so residents and business owners will continue to have access to their properties through the duration of the property. And the intent of the full closure is to reduce the overall duration of the impacts. We could have done lane by lane, sidewalk by sidewalk, but it likely would have meant that that project would have, gone on for months and months. And so this was the quickest way to get this work done. Moving to an update on the North Choro Greenway project. And so the Foothill to Ramona shared use path, you may recall that the city council and the city was able to negotiate the purchase of this from the LDS Church. And so the concrete has been poured, and we've established the path, and we expect completion in early September. Happy to report that the curb ramps, 90% of the 46, yeah, that's right, 46 accessible curb ramps have been completed. And then the bike medians, the constructions will begin in September. You'll see some variable message signing being deployed a week prior, and flyers will be posted along the corridor as well to remind residents and travelers through that intersection of the various different activities. And so, again, I just want to appreciate everyone's patience and support while we make these significant investments in San Luis Obispo. Next, this is top of mind for everyone as we read and observed the horrendous fires and loss of life in Hawaii and Lahaina. We want everyone to know your evacuation zone. And so these new evacuation zones have been rolled out countywide. These will be used during large-scale emergency evacuations. This is a personal responsibility for everyone, not just of your city, but everyone to be ready. And we encourage everyone to know that evacuation zone and do what you can by visiting readyslow.org/EVAC zone. That's EVAC zone. And you can share the zone with your family members and your neighbors. First responders will be using these zones and communicating them out during emergencies, and knowing your zone ahead of time will save you precious time. So ready, set, go. Everyone should be learning that, because when it's time for you to evacuate, you need to be ready to do that and play your part. The next item I want to just share with the community, and it's a little bit of unfortunate news, relates to Mitchell Park. In June, the city contracted with West Coast Arborists to perform a comprehensive risk assessment of the heritage Chamel ash tree in Mitchell Park. And the tree's been showing some significant decline. It's located adjacent to a restroom, playground, and the senior center outdoor area. We pursued the assessment as part of our upcoming grant application for the beautification project to renovate the current patio and to add some additional bocce ball courts and some other activities for the senior center to be constructed later this year. Ultimately, we concluded that the tree is indicating some signs, some pretty significant decay, as kind of indicated on that spectrogram. And because of the overall condition and safety risk and the size and location of the tree, staff will be updating the tree committee at the August 28 meeting, and it'll be posted for removal. So we are proposing a replacement tree, a 5-foot box replacement tree of the same species. But this is an unfortunate loss for our community. Just wanted to let the city council and the community know about this. The next item, I'm sure there'll be some questions about this. We did issue some notices regarding our rotating safe overnight parking program. As the council can, and maybe the community can remember, during the pandemic, the council, because of the various different fallout issues associated with the pandemic, where we're seeing a significant amount of unhoused individuals who were living in cars and RVs. And during that time, the council authorized the implementation of a safe parking program at the Railroad Museum area. That program is coming to an end on August 27th. And we went to, staff went to the Planning Commission in July and asked for authority for essentially a master use permit. We did issue notices last week, potentially seeking a location on Palm Street as part of this rotating program. And we received a significant amount of public input based upon the notices that were sent to residents in the surrounding area. Based upon the information that the Community Development Director received on that proposed location, she's deferring the decision to the Planning Commission. And so everyone who has provided comments to the City Council and to staff and the Planning Commission will be provided notice in addition to the residents surrounding that area. We don't have an exact date of when this commission meeting will be held. The next Planning Commission meeting, I believe, and Teresa, please correct me, is it September 15th? September 6th, I believe, but we're not gonna, don't use that date. We may be looking for a special meeting of the Planning Commission. So you may be asking the question, so what's going to happen to those 13 to 20 individuals or vehicles that are using that location? We may recall we had significant community issues prior to the establishment of that location because they were dispersed throughout the city, and it was an unmanaged program. So we'll be working with our community partners and investigating alternatives until ultimately the Planning Commission or other decisions are made about an alternative location. And if there's more questions about that, I can invite Director Tway to come up and answer any questions. So with that, Madam Mayor, that answers my portion, and I would invite Chief Scott to come forward and give an update to the City Council.
Thank you, City Manager Johnson, and good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. Always great to be in front of you. However, these are certainly unfortunate circumstances to be here giving you an update on this hate group that has been active in our community. To start off, to echo the mayor's comments, and we have a welcoming, we have an inclusive, and we have a very safe city. When things like this happen, sometimes it doesn't feel that way. And so we obviously have more work to do to support all members of our community and to continue to reinforce our welcoming and safe community. So as I led off with, as each of you are aware, and as certainly members of our community are aware of the recent activity, I'm not going to say their name to give them any more notoriety, but let's just say they're a Nazi-based white supremacist hate group that's been operating in and around our community. We've also had several reports of them also operating both in the communities north and south of us as well. Highly prolific, they're pretty mobile, and they get around and typically will drop flyers and have banners and things like that to send their message. The police department's been working very closely with our other law enforcement partners, not only here in the region, but beyond. Some of our partners include the Anti-Defamation League, and they've been very instrumental in helping us assess any threats to our community that could be now or present in the future based on this group's activities. This group has been distributing, as I mentioned, flyers and perpetuating hate speech. Although these actions, as you mentioned, Madam Mayor, are constitutionally protected, we're going to continue to take a stand and let it be known that these actions are not welcome in our community, and we're going to continue to reinforce that message. The city has released a statement denouncing this group's activities, and I again want to applaud the mayor in leading that effort and putting that communication out. First and foremost, that we do stand against hate-based speech, and that the police department, has also released a report out, an infographic which is up on our website right now on how to report any type of hate-based activity. It doesn't necessarily have to be a crime. It can be hate speech or anything that you feel may be threatening. We believe it's very important to have that information. I don't have it with you to share here up on the screen, but please, I want to drive traffic to our website so you can see the infographic, and from there you can also anonymously report activity. You don't have to provide your name. You can do this anonymously. It's just very important that we get the information, however it may come in. The police department continues to stay engaged, again, with our community and our community partners to encourage people to come forward and tell their stories if they feel that they've been threatened in any way. And we also want to remind the community to also stay engaged to the resources that are out there, including the city's Department of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Our Human Relations Commission is also another good avenue, and we have a wide array of city advocacy nonprofits out there that can help anybody that wishes to come forward and provide information through that route as well. I will leave you lastly with our non-emergency number. So if any of these other avenues are not working out, you can always call. And so that number is 805-781-7312. Again, thank you for the time and allowing me to update you on this unfortunate circumstance. And I'll continue to provide updates as long as this activity continues in our community. And I'm available for any questions that you may have on this.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Pease.
Thank you, Chief. I understand also it's a relatively small group numbers-wise. Is that correct? Is that you're tracking?
Our estimates are less than 5.
Fewer than 5 people,
Yes.
individuals that are doing this. Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Thank you very much. And thank you also for mentioning around the anonymous aspect. I know that sometimes people may not feel comfortable with law enforcement. While we completely support you, I know that's
Certainly.
also a concern in the marginalized communities. And so thank you for that option as well. And thank you for the update.
Thank you.
Any other questions for City Manager? Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Pease. Sorry.
Hey, thank you. City Manager, I appreciate the update about the safe parking program, and I understand the intent is the rotation, and I'm wondering if somebody could give us a little bit of an update. We're looking for more organizations to host, perhaps out of the faith community, and I'm wondering what that involves. Is that, how big? Is there porta potties required? Who provides what's the logistics of that? So maybe organizations could understand if that would be a good fit for them to be able to help out in this important matter.
Madam Mayor and Councilmember Pease, maybe if I could ask Daisy Whitebird to come up and talk a little bit. As she's walking up, I know we've had some extensive conversations with the Faith Roundtable and various different faith organizations, and we've had some interest, I think, and so Daisy can give an update on where we are and where that interest stands today, and if people are interested, how they can contact us.
Great, thank you. Good evening. We have been meeting with the faith community, and I know there are a few representatives here tonight even, for about 8 months, developing a rotating safe parking model. So we have been looking for faith-based organizations and other community organizations or businesses that would be interested in hosting our safe parking program for 1 month at a time. And we're looking for sites that would host up to 15 to 20 vehicles or RVs, although we're also talking with faith-based organizations that might be interested in a smaller site, 5 to 10 vehicles as well. We are modeling this after successful safe parking programs throughout the state. We've talked with the city of Fremont in the Bay Area, who operates a similar program with the faith community, and then the county of Santa Barbara with New Beginnings. They have a different model where it's permanent sites, but they offer 26 different sites on a nightly basis. And that's a program that we would aspire to model ours after someday. To start, we're really looking, again, for organizations that would be willing to commit to a 1 month of hosting the safe parking program, which has been very successful at the railroad site. We've partnered with Capslo, who manages that program, and they've helped house 38 individuals out of the safe parking program. They've helped 9 individuals get reunified with their family, and they've helped 5 individuals get permanent jobs. And so we've seen it be a really successful program in terms of giving individuals a consistent, safe place to park overnight. And really just want to reiterate that this is an overnight parking program. So it's from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. with case management to really try and connect individuals to services and housing. So any interested faith-based organizations, businesses, would love to talk to any and everyone. I'm heading to a board meeting for a church shortly to talk with them about the program, and would love to field questions from anyone about that.
Terrific. So similar to prior to 40 Prado, when there was a rotation for the homeless overflow, we called it, it would be managed by Capslo. They provide the facilities and the program management, et cetera. So there'd be.
Correct. Yeah, it would be managed by Capslo. They would check participants in each evening, check them out each morning, and similar to our railroad location, the city would provide a portable restroom, a wash station, and a trash dumpster that would be serviced. So there's a lot of oversight and structure with this program, and again, we've seen it be very impactful for individuals in the community.
Right, provides some certainty for them to have a safe place
stability
overnight and not be in the neighborhood. So great, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Shoresman.
Yes, thank you. I don't know if this is Daisy or I'll leave it to you to decide who should address this question, but I've gotten several questions about if the railroad location has been so successful, why the need to move it, change it. Is there something that you can point to, or what is related to the pandemic? It sounds like that is making us make this change now.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Councilmember Shoresman. A great question. We did bring a permit application to the Planning Commission to continue the program. If you recall, the council's emergency resolution during the pandemic authorized the safe parking program to continue for 6 months. But prior to the end of the 6 months, which is August 27th, we needed to seek a permit and go through the permitting process. And we came to the Planning Commission. There was some public testimony received by the Planning Commission, and based upon the testimony, we did not return back to the Planning Commission to pursue a permit there. And so we went and looked at a variety of different alternative locations. We scoured the city for alternative sites, and ultimately we landed as the location for Palm Street as an alternative. I anticipate when the Palm Street location comes up that perhaps the Planning Commission may, have some questions about the viability of the current location. I can't pretend to suggest what will be discussed, but that's the background about ultimately how we landed where we are today.
Thank you. I think that's helpful for those who are not quite as tuned in on all the decision-making processes and how the pandemic impacted where we are today.
Thank you. Councilmember Francis.
Yeah, I think my question is probably for Daisy, just a quick follow-up on the process that you're undergoing for developing our rotational program. My understanding is that theoretically that program should be up and running in the next month to 4 months is the hope. And I was wondering if we could articulate what some of the barriers are between today, where we are, and where we hope to be in 1 month. Are we still looking for the locations, or is it just programmatic structure that's being worked out?
Yeah, right now we're again in the process. There are about 4 faith-based organizations that we're meeting with regularly and just doing our due diligence and wanting to address any of their concerns. Their leadership and their boards are being very intentional about this decision and partnership, as they should, and wanting to make sure that we're going through that process with them, looking at liability insurance coverage and MOU agreements between the faith-based organizations and Capslo. And so really just making sure that it's a well thought out and executed program for the host sites, for Capslo and the city, just to make sure that it's a successful program. And so we're, trying to tee up several locations for that rotating model and just continuing to try and work towards confirming those sites.
Thank you. Appreciate the clarification.
Probably should just stay. Vice Mayor Marks.
Thank you. Back in the day when we had the homeless overflow, actually, I volunteered for that for months. I mean years, but basically it was there was a prioritization of families, and so it was people with children. And it was very mellow. The whole thing was very well organized, and I'm just curious if it would be possible for the safe parking program that's contemplated now to, in some way, prioritize families with children. I think that would reduce some of the anxiety that some of the neighbors are feeling about having the program located close to neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I will say I can speak for Capslo in terms of 40 Prado Homeless Services Center, that they prioritize families and never turn a family away or will help find them a hotel or shelter if they need it. I think it will just depend if we have families that are needing to utilize safe parking. Right now, I know we have at least one mother and daughter that are using the safe parking site. We've had Cal Poly students that use the safe parking site. We have a few elderly individuals that use it. So that's kind of the population that is currently using or needing safe parking. But as more, if we have more families with children that are needing safe parking, that would definitely be something that we would prioritize. And I think as we move towards a model with multiple sites, that's something that we've seen in Santa Barbara County, where of their 26 sites, there are certain sites that are only for women and children. And so I think that's, again, a model that we could aspire to if we have multiple sites that we're able to operate at one time.
Thank you so much. Appreciate all your questions, all of your answers to all of our questions. I do have, I think, one more question for Chief Scott around the enforcement and safe parking.
While Chief Scott's coming up, maybe we can also talk about, that one of the key provisions of a safe parking program includes
background checks.
It includes a good neighbor policy.
Mm-hmm.
So a good neighbor policy. So we essentially have requirements about what the expectations are for both the participants and the operators of the site.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a key component of the program. And that would be ultimately what the Planning Commission can evaluate. So that's a key component. I will say that based upon the public testimony that we received today, we got some good ideas about Palm Street and what we needed to do. And so I know Director Tway was already looking at some additional conditions, but that's what we hope to have as we have a discussion with the Planning Commission at the hearing, is ultimately how do we craft the conditions in a program in a way that try to address the neighborhood issues.
Wonderful, thank you. And I also think just following up with Councilmember Shoresman and what we've had with the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic, I know there's some different rules now that we have, I guess, kind of could go back to from pre-pandemic days around enforcement. And would just love for you to share a little bit about illegal activity is still illegal activity and can be enforced if necessary. Can you share about that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council, and to echo City Manager Johnson's comments. And our goal, obviously, is to avoid enforcement wherever possible, and to have a great partnership with a contract provider wherever we establish safe parking can avoid a lot of the enforcement issues of people not following the rules, and to have that extra set of eyes and ears on the site. And I think from our previous studies, that's where we've seen some of the programs fall a little flat, is not having an investment in the site as well as the surrounding community as to what the impacts are of the actual program. So you're correct with COVID now. the restrictions are lifted, we are actively enforcing our parking regulations around the city. And so there's a numerous zones throughout the city that you're not able to park for certain periods of time or overnight, depending on signage. And then we don't allow vehicles being stored in the street for over 72 hours. And so that's something that we continue to focus on throughout the community.
Great, thank you so much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, and then I just wanted to say, City Manager, thank you very much for sharing the other ways to get to be slow in motion. I know a lot of times we hear social media because it's what a lot of us use, but I also know that I get some comments about, I don't use social media, how do I get a hold of what's happening at the city? So thank you for highlighting all the different ways. All right, well now we move on to the part of the agenda where you get to share public comment about items that are not on the agenda. So if we are not on the consent agenda and it's not on the public hearing and business items, if you have a comment, this is that time. And if you have not turned in a half sheet form to the city clerk, that is also an opportunity that you can still do, as demonstrated by this lovely woman here. And they're right behind there, the public comment speaker slips, or right outside. And city clerk, do you have the first speaker?
Yes, and just so everyone's clear, we have 14 in chamber speakers and 1 virtual. So are we going to,
14 times 3, well, sorry, 15 times 3, we'd be here for another 45 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and minimize those public comments to 2 minutes per comment, or per person, I should say.
okay. And to make this go quicker, I'm going to read off 3 names. If you'll line up and just be ready to do your public comment. The first one is Abby Larson, Gail Riff, and then Carolyn Gutman.
And I will say one more thing before speakers speak. If you are here as a municipal advocate or lobbying from someone, please make sure that you share that before you go into your public comment.
I'm Abby Lassen. I'm speaking tonight as a representative of the Jewish Community Center, Federation of San Luis Obispo. I would like to commend both Chief Scott and the DEI department, confirming their commitment to creating a safe space for diverse residents of SLO. I'm also here because I want to let the community know that the JCC has been seeking to reassure our Jewish residents and all residents that it has been coordinating efforts to monitor and to educate residents to stay connected with our civic and legal organizations, and to be prepared if needed to react to any future incidents. As a co-chair of the Federation's Community Affairs Council, I have been involved in efforts to promote respect for all and understanding of various cultural, ethnic, and religious traditions, and to build coalitions with local organizations pursuing these same objectives. And a final note, in 40-some seconds, I'm personally alarmed by the flyers, which were designed to evoke fear. I'm a granddaughter of immigrants. My daughter's paternal grandfather left Poland because he sensed bad things were happening in the late 1920s. So I'm hoping today in SLO County, we can come together as a community to ensure what we did at the Pledge of Allegiance, that we are one nation, indivisible. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm Gail Rife, and I'm a resident of the Toscano development, and it's 159 unit. Some of you know me. I've been so supportive of the affordable housing that we have built. I really strongly believe in community. I believe it's the right thing, and I love the fact that we have a more diversified community that will be coming in. I'm here, though, today a little bit disappointing. I'm here to talk about the lighting and night sky preservation requirements we have. Roughly, if you look at the first page, this was June 15th, 2020. I'm not going to bore you, but I'd responded to this requirement. And I just want you to know I made a response, and I primarily talked about at that time parking. I was kind of naive. I thought there wasn't enough parking there, and my residents in my development were going to suffer until, I don't know who the woman was, but she was one of the commissioners, and she looked at me at Zoom, and she said, I don't feel sorry for your development one bit. You have a 2-car garage, all of you, and you have places to park. And she was right. She really changed my whole attitude about parking, that our development has 2 cars, our CCNRs require it, and regardless you get the fight and all that, she just totally changed my view on that. But if you go to the second page, you're going to see 2 circles there, the one to the left and the one to the right. The one on the left shows the tandem parking spaces. If you were to go way to the left of those tandem parking spaces and go through the drainage areas, that's my backyard. And at the time, and also to the right, it says the maximum height of these lighting poles were supposed to be 12 feet. If you go to the next page, and that's my handwriting there, you'll see the tandem spaces that show 14 spaces, and there are today. And I also at the time had asked for a little fencing perimeter to cover the parked cars there, and they gave me that, so I'm happy. Oh, is that me already? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I apologize. But if you do have time, these are the pictures of what it looks like.
Thank you.
And I apologize for the time. I wasn't paying attention, but those are the pictures, and I'm really disappointed in how it turned out.
Thank you so much.
After our next speaker, we'll have Brian Kessner, Mark Adams, and Scott Summers.
I was just informed this evening that we're having a hearing on the safe parking program for our community, so this might be a little bit of a moot point, but figured I'd written it down. It was going to come up anyway.
Just so you know, we are not having a hearing on that right now.
Oh, right. No, I know.
Okay.
Yeah, in the future. My name is Caroline Gutman. I'm a homeowner living on Phillips Lane, just a few blocks from the proposed safe parking program on Palm Street. I frequently walk my 2-year-old son down Mill, up Grand to Palm and back home, as well as use Palm Street as a through street, both of which be impacted with the proposed program. My brother and his family live in the neighborhood, as do my parents. This is a neighborhood that we've all worked really hard to purchase our homes with. And one thing that I think is not being talked about is how if we ever wanted to sell our home, this now impacts the value of our home, because it's material fact that we will have to disclose that there is a safe parking program a block away. So with that being said, I think it's a great program. I really love that mothers and children are prioritized, because I'm a mother. And so the only thing I'm asking is that maybe we look at other areas outside of our residence. Some ideas that I had, which sounds like you guys are talking about, were church parking lots, business parking lots. Cuesta Park has a huge parking lot that's easily accessible. Sunset Drive-In, Prado Road, and Elks Road. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, Brian Kessner, Mark Adams, and then Scott Summers.
I've been a resident of this county for about 45 years, and I'm a retired emeritus professor of architecture at Cal Poly. I taught housing and sustainable community design for most of the years I was there. And so I'm an outsider to the inside that I see, and I'm happy for the work you're doing. I am very happy to see the city and the county refocus their definition of affordable housing down toward low and very low, and hopefully homeless housing as the priorities for the future. The market seems to be taking care of everybody else. And so my message really is just asking you to be aggressive. And there are many different kinds of housing programs that are informal, nonprofit, or quasi-institutional, such as, and this may seem extreme, but Delancey Street is a program in San Francisco that was initiated about 30 years ago. And basically it's a city block on the bayfront, right by the Bay Bridge, that was built by the residents. So it's a 4-story structure that is mixed use, that basically has a changing population that were deferred from jails and some pretty serious sentences in order to rebuild their knowledge of life and how to live it. And it's been a much more successful program in terms of recidivism than other programs. I think being sensitive to the people on the street and their belongings and the gap between that and very low income housing as a priority is what I would like to promote.
Thank you so
for
much.
your work.
Thank you.
Mark Adams?
Mark Adams. I live at 824 Grove Street, and we're impacted by the Palm Street program that you're going to put on. My biggest complaint so far is I got one postcard, and when I called the city, they said all they were qualified, all they had to do was contact people within 300 feet. I just got a card the other day. Someone's adding a bed and breakfast, or they're adding a room on to a house on Charles Street, 5 blocks away. I think if we're going to do a program like this, I think it's a courtesy to the citizens who live here to be at least 5 to 7 blocks. So anyway, whoever got all this changed, I want to say thank you, because now we're going to the Planning Commission. We'll have a formal process. And what led us to not want this, it's not zoned for it. That Vets Hall is a major Cal Poly. For the first 3 weeks of school, that's where all the Cal Poly kids hang, because they can't go to the bars for a couple of years. So they're there, and and all the people who go out of town, that's where they catch the buses. All the motel people go there. It's just not the right place. Plus, if you go north, 95% of the neighborhood is residential. So we've had numerous problems. You're all ladies. I can let the 4 ladies who've had homeless people walk in their home, show up at their back door, and flashlights through the windows. And that's not fear, that's called terror. And so anyway, the additional time is giving us time to organize. We're organizing our neighborhood and everybody around us to come back to stop this. And to finalize this, Mayor, I really enjoyed talking to you. You were very patient, and I understand that it's kind of like Star Wars. You're the rebels, and you're finally gathering your forces, and we're finally going to attack this. California dropped the ball on this 5 years ago. I mean, and now it's finally coming together. I'm not unsympathetic. And by the lady who was most affected on Palm Street, she has fixed dinner once a month for the homeless people for 7 years. She goes to Costco and cooks for them. And in addition to that, she goes to the church to oversit them. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Scott Summers, then Linda Winters, and then Chris Davis.
Hello, City Council members. My name is Scott Summers. I've been in this area approximately 46 years. I've been a chef all around the Central Coast. I'm bringing to your attention, in 1998, I sued General Motors Corporation over a Corvette. That began a nightmare with Goldman Sachs and the local bank, Community Bank, which has led me here today. I want to go ahead and begin again. On or about 1998, the District Attorney Trice used electromagnetic surveillance. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but they used it then and they use it now. And it killed a good friend of mine named Cal Dunlap. His home burnt down because of the use of this. Now, to fast forward to 2008, I was living in a place called California Manor. This is owned by Judy Goldman from Goldman Sachs, Diane Feinstein, Dan Goldman. Three women were murdered there, poisoned to death. Nobody's investigating this. I sued Judy Goldman in 2010 for torture for $18 million, and she defaulted. And no one's investigating this? All right. Lloyd Blankenfeld, right after these murders, you know, the billionaire Lloyd Blankenfeld, Goldman Sachs, he bought all the bonds on the task at our city council because they were investigating these homicides. They immediately shut down the investigations. To this day, these women, one of the name was the downstairs neighbor was Betty May. I watched her as her hair fell out, and she died in 2 weeks. She was poisoned to death. All right. Well, that's all I got to say. I'm asking for an investigation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Linda Winters, Chris Davis, and then Ali Akura.
Good evening. My name is Linda Winters, a 29-year resident of Morro Bay. So why am I here tonight in San Luis Obispo? To tell you about an event that has happened every single Monday night for the past 9 3/4 years in Morro Bay. The Morro Bay Monday night community dinner. This dinner is served at the Morro Bay Vets Hall, centrally located. Anyone can attend. Anyone that walks through the doors at the vets can expect this: 5 to 6 tables covered with clothing, toiletry articles, blankets, towels, and household goods. 8 tables covered with foods supplied by the Slow Food Bank, fresh vegetables, bakery items, and foods from local markets. Currently, we receive between 300 and 500 pounds a week. 8 tables. Then at 5 p.m., anyone that chooses to attend receives a hot meal that is prepared and served by one of 6 different organizations. Hearty foods, ample servings, served by a battery of volunteers from all walks of life. To date, there has been over 32,000 meals served every single Monday night for the past 9 3/4 years, including one very stormy Monday night in January 9th this year. There was no electricity throughout the city, but the Lions Club managed to open the doors of the vets' halls, cook something on the gas range, and served a candlelight dinner for 20 folks. We are very fortunate that we have the Community Resource Office with a multitude of services available: social services, EBT cards, free phones and tablets, and a visiting CHC nurse. How many unhoused attend this particular dinner? Possibly 20 folks out of the 80. I welcome every one of you to come and visit our Monday night dinner. It's
Thank
very
you.
heartwarming.
Thank you so much.
Chris Davis, Ali Axelrod.
Madam Mayor and City Council members, good evening. I'm Ellie Axelroth, and I've lived in this community for 24 years, since 1984, sorry. 1 year after the farmer's market started. I've raised 2 children here, and I now have 2 grandchildren here, so what happens here matters to me, and so I'm speaking about the racist hate flyers, banners in our community. I'm also Jewish. I'm a member of Congregation Beth David, and I'm a core leader with Bend the Arc, which is a national organization devoted to social justice with a Jewish lens. This September, Jews around the world will gather to celebrate Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the Jewish New Year and Day of Atonement. Unlike our secular New Year, the Jewish New Year is not celebrated with a ball dropping on Times Square or partying or drinking. For us, these are solemn days, days of contemplation and awe. But as we drive through the front gate of our synagogue, we will be reminded that these gates are nearly always locked for reasons of safety. On these most sacred days, we will see a security guard posted outside the synagogue. And there will be 2 members of the congregation standing outside, alert to anyone who might pose a threat. We pride ourselves on being a welcoming congregation, and yet we must be cautious in greeting the stranger. This year, we will be aware of the white supremacist banners and flyers that are meant to communicate a threat to our lives and the lives of others in our community. If only we could dismiss the banners and flyers as trivial. But violence has its seeds in ignorance, misunderstanding, and indifference. We cannot look the other way or hope that the ugliness will simply go away. That is why we are voicing our concern publicly and standing together with our allies and partners. I want to say thank you to Mayor Stewart and the other city council members, Chief of Police, for working together with all of us to say no to hatred in our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next 3 speakers are Chelsea Ruiz, Julie Jones, Becky Jorgensen.
Hi, my name is Chris Davis, and like my neighbor here, I would not have been here if they hadn't have alerted us about the safe parking area. We didn't even know about it, and it was supposed to be a done deal. But it's interesting that you gave an award to the Downtown Association for the Farmers Market for their tourism. As a neighbor there, of course, I'm concerned about the parking there, but also I would think that of one of the worst places you could put parking would be at the farmer's market. The second place would be putting it right in the middle of your motel guest area. That's where most of all your tourists come. And how would you like to come and pay $250 a night and sleep across the street from an encampment? So I think economically, it's a really poor choice. Also, I think it should be, you should look at things like, is it safe for them? Tuesday, I took the train to San Diego. As I pulled into the parking lot at the train station, there was an opening between two cars. I started to pull in, and somebody was sleeping between the two cars. Fortunately, I stopped and found another parking place. So I think those kind of things should be taken into consideration. As the other gentleman said, Cal Poly uses that area in the springtime especially to park their cars, and all that would be taken away. But possibly putting them in some non-public place off of Johnson near the public health parking lots or something like that. But putting people in a public place in a neighborhood, I don't think, and at the gateway to your community is not a good idea.
Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Chelsea, and I have been a resident of Slow City for the past 10 years with my husband and my 2 children, and I'm actively involved in my religious community and in the school communities that we belong to, and I have a public comment in regards to the white supremacist hate speech as well. First of all, again, as everyone has said, I'm really grateful to the city for the very robust diversity, equity, and inclusion program that you have here, and also to the mayor for her swift denunciation on social media of these actions, and also for Police Chief Scott for all of his support. And I have a brief poem I wanted to share that I feel like it eloquently expresses why I'm here, as not as a person of color. It's called First They Came by Pastor Martin Niemöller. Excuse me for getting emotional. It's first they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. And then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. And then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. And I want to echo the other people who have made comments about this, this really tragic occurrence that we've seen in our city. And I want to speak out as a white person, as a Christian, that this does not represent my values. This does not represent the values of my fellow community members, my friends, our neighbors. And I just really appreciate the city for taking this so seriously, and just would encourage the city to continue to pursue all of the wonderfully supportive and welcoming initiatives and actions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. Becky Jorgensen. I second that lady's comments. I'm a 59-year resident of San Luis Obispo County. I am here to be the voice tonight of all the homeless people in our community that have no voice. I'm asking you to stop violating the Martin v. Boise Act that says if there's not enough shelter, you cannot punish people for sleeping on public land. It's still happening. People are still being cited. They're still being arrested. They still go to jail. then they have a horrible record, and it's harder than ever for them to get housing or a job. So please stop criminalizing homelessness. Please stop fighting the lawsuit that's going on, because it's insane that we don't understand what people need, what homeless people need. And if any of you ever had a homeless family member or a friend, you'd want someone like Hope's Village watching out for them. We're spending so much money on the twomexicans.com to clean up their trash when there would be no trash if we gave them trash receptacles. I personally took 20 red trash cans and lined them along the Bob Jones Trail, and they were all picked up because I didn't have a permit. We don't need safe parking sites. We need permanent mobile home parks or campgrounds or somewhere where people can afford to be. We cannot continue to spend $500,000 on all these projects per unit. And I'm very happy for the 4 housing projects that may or may not come to fruition. It's a wonderful start. I'm glad for that. But we could be a beacon of hope in America, right here in San Luis Obispo, if we would start tiny house villages, real stick-built tiny house villages that people could afford, that we could put a lot of our homeless people in and be a model for the rest of the community, the state, and the nation. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Julie Jones, John Little, and Ash.
My name is Julie Jones. I am the chairman of the annual Better Together Luncheon that we co-sponsor with the NAACP, and a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and they're for public affairs. And I am, first of all, so grateful for our city council and for our mayor and for Chief Scott for the support that he's given to our community. I want to speak about the hate speech and the things that we've been witnessing lately. And one of the reasons it's sort of important to me is that we had an experience as a family. It was about two days after Thanksgiving of last year. Our family lives sort of all on a street, and it's called Jones Way. And we have a lot of mailboxes at the end, and we came out to find some really, really ugly graffiti on our mailboxes that were threatening against the Mormon religion. They used foul language. It was really pretty scary. And the best thing we did was, as quickly as we could, get those magic markers off and report it to the police. I think what I want to say is that to tell everyone that if something happens, they need to report it and not ignore it. And you worry about giving energy to these people and making a big deal out of it, but we can't do anything about it unless we alert everyone. And so I just wanted to that's my message tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
John Little, Ash, and Cornell Morton. That's our last in-chamber speaker.
Hello, I'm John Little. I'm speaking about the Railroad Safe Parking Program. I live about 2 blocks away on Santa Rosa Street near Mitchell Park. I'm responding to some comments I saw in the Slow Times article from this Monday. I saw one resident of nearby the Vets Hall say that they're against running the safe parking program in a residential area, and I've heard that a lot this evening. What homeless people need is safety and quiet when they sleep. And so I view no better area as a resident than a residential area. I think where else would you relegate people to, like the side of the highway or an outdoor space? I think that's just a bad argument that we shouldn't be listening to. Other comments suggested that it was unsuccessful, and I think that's also patently untrue. We've seen people uplift their lives in this program. People are worried about the nature of their neighborhood, and I think that the right to determine the nature of one's neighborhood does not mean that one can exclude someone else from having the right to a safe, quiet place to sleep. When you're homeless, you get kicked around a lot, and the safe, quiet nature of the railroad parking site, provided with the basic social amenities of check-ins, trash, a bathroom, that is what is letting our neighbors uplift their lives. And with even more providence to our neighbors, we can be a stronger city. I view this issue as a competition of which neighborhood in SLO can be the most compassionate to their neighbors. I bike by the parking site every day to and from work. I view our neighbors as quiet and safe and respectful. And I think that the lengths that they're going through to be common considerate of their neighbors is one that we can repay in turn. We should do the same.
Thank you so much. Sorry, your mic went off halfway through. Oh.
Is it on? Hello? Perfect. Hello, my name's Ash, and I'm saying no to the advancement of communism in our homeless shelters. As per more details about California Government Code Section 1027.5, I'm a homeless American capitalist. I'm saying to keep the consumer choice of unique services at different establishments alive. The concerted activity regarding the horizontal instillment of this detrimental compressed program at multiple locations is what communism takes away from us. I am saying cultivate the unique services offered at competing brands. I have the opportunity as a capitalist American of whether to get 18-inch tires at American Tire Depot or go to Big Brand Tire and get 22-inch tires. I go to Good Samaritan Shelter and Echo to enroll in a compressed 3-month program. I go to Prados of the Day Center. This is known as the separation of powers of service extensions. Every facet of our society works like this, from using additional service extensions at Amazon to watch Prime movies or getting modified base extensions at eBay, known as bidding on products. I am saying to maintain the fundamental structure of services regarding capitalism at the homeless. Not to mention, yet I'll say it anyways, the compressed program leads to less access. Stereotypically, a homeless person will need to go to doctor's appointments and courts 20 times a year. Having a 3-month program allows 3 doctor's visits. A year-long non-consecutive overnight stay allows all the opportunities to be presentable for appointments. I am saying this, if thy likes thy freedoms of choice. The monopoly of services provided at different brands is conscious parallelism. Prado's changing its program structure to mimic every other homeless shelter as if the tire stores were only allowed to sell one main size of tires. I am saying no on the compressed program at Prado due to reasons of success and trade.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good evening. On behalf of the Diversity Coalition, San Luis Obispo County, I, Cornell Morton, as board chair, want to express our concern about the recent incidents involving hate in our community and want to express our support for efforts that are underway to resolve or to at least look into those issues. Needless to say, they are serious. Needless to say, they are in many ways a threat, not only to the physical health of individuals in our community, but also the emotional health of individuals in our community. Those incidents are designed in many ways to be acts of terror, to frighten people, to have us worry, to have us concerned about our own safety and the safety of our communities. We know that behavior because we've seen it before, and as we've expressed in the past, it is very likely to reappear. The Diversity Coalition, San Luis Obispo County, diversityslo.org, offers programs, educational programs, especially working with young people in our K-12 schools. where we believe we get an early start on helping individuals, young people especially, to understand their place in this world in relationship to others. I want to, on behalf of the board, to applaud the council because you are and have been advocates, you've been allies, you have partnered with the coalition in many ways. We continue to support the efforts that you are underway with, your DEI efforts, et cetera. So on behalf of the board, know that we are willing and able and ready to partner with you in any way possible. And to our fellow citizens throughout this county, know that the coalition is concerned about your well-being. Please reach out to us at diversityslow.org. Let's stand up to hate. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Our final speaker is Rita Casaverde. Rita, you can go ahead and turn on your camera and unmute yourself.
Thank you so much. I will not turn on my camera because I have a 1-year-old jumping around that I've been able to feed, bathe, and change during this meeting. So thank you so much for providing the opportunity for working parents and anyone that cannot come physically to the city to provide public comment. Thank you for the opportunity to provide it virtually. I wanted to say that I'm really thankful for the explicit language and the direct language that has been used today to talk about the Nazis, the white supremacist group that has been on our bridges and distributing literature that is hateful. Thank you to all the community members that have come to provide public comment on that. I think, like Chelsea Reese mentioned, I don't need to be LGBTQIA and I don't need to be from the Jewish faith to be concerned about what we're seeing here in the county and the city of SLO. I think as an ally, as a community member, as a person of color, I can flex my empathy muscle and speak supporting all the communities here in SLO County that feel threatened by these type of acts. So thank you so much for Chief Scott for calling them white supremacists as they are. Thank you, Mayor Stewart, for your statement. Thank you to the Office of DEI for your work. And thank you to anyone that's sending up to support their neighbors, because that's what we're supposed to be doing, loving our neighbors, supporting our neighbors, whether it's advocating for safe parking or whether it's advocating for our Jewish neighbors or LGBTQ neighbors that really need our support right now. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Any other public comments?
No, that was the final one.
Okay, thank you. Well, that was a lot of public comment today. I think that a break would be wonderful, and I will see you all at 7:00. Well, thank you everyone for taking a break. We're going to go ahead and get back to the meeting. Probably see another one, don't worry. All right, so thank you. All right, so I just wanted to thank everyone who spoke, whether you are here or you've already left for a public comment. There's a lot of information that was shared today, and I know that the chief went out to one of the individuals who was talking about something that was potentially criminal, and so thank you, Chief. And I think that the city manager has some input as well.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. I just do appreciate the speakers coming tonight, and just I know that our Office of DEI and Nestor Velez-Pasalacqua and Chief Scott have shown some real leadership in responding. I want to thank the mayor as well for making a statement. As the chief indicated, there will be continued vigilance on behalf of the city. I did want to address some of the other comments that came up tonight, again, with the safe parking program. So there will be a notice going out and that will advise of the date and time for the Planning Commission. I did have a chance to speak with some of the speakers tonight, and they appreciated that Director Tway elevated that decision. It's an important community conversation, and one that we hope that people will approach with a lot of humanity and understanding, because this is a very difficult issue that is really challenging California. We have, Director Tway has been in contact with Gail Riff about some of the issues at Toscano. And so I know that she's assigned some staff to look into some of the issues, including the issue that she raised today regarding some HOA obligations and whether or not the city is interpreting it the same way that she is. Lastly, I just want to appreciate the professor from Cal Poly who spoke. There is some exciting news on the horizon. We did hear from Haslo that the former Maxine Lewis site has now achieved its full funding status for those nearly 35 units, in addition to full funding for the first phase of affordable housing on Monterey Street. So I'm really excited about that. It is, a step. It's not the end of the journey, but it is a step in the right direction. And so very appreciative of everyone who's worked hard on that. And as those projects get closer to breaking ground, we'll certainly let the council and the community know about that.
And can you remind us, I believe it's around 600 units total in the next 2 years that we'll be seeing come online?
We've got about 700 units total that are entitled. The issue is funding. So that's, we've done a really good job with our partnership with Haslo and the inclusionary housing fees, just cobbling together the variety of different funding to make these projects happen. So they're happening one step at a time. As the council knows, there was a significant investment just right down the street here with Anderson. And so that has tied up both a lot of our funding capacity, but also at the same time, some of our organizational capacity to deliver on projects. I would probably say that the time horizon on those is probably more like 5 years that we think all those units will come online.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Pease.
And I just want to add our final speaker who spoke online, a parent with a young child who was able to engage in local democracy remotely. And so there was, certainly some financial investment on behalf of the city for the equipment, but just a ton of time. I'd like to thank our city clerk and our whole clerk's office and our IT department for a lot of behind the scenes work to make that happen. So thank you.
Well said. Vice Mayor Marks.
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly address the issue of the hate speech that's going on, and I really feel it's incredibly important to nip it in the bud as effectively as we can within the limits of the law. My husband's parents fled from the Nazis in the 30s, and in our trip recently, we went back to the village where their ancestors had lived for since the 1600s before they were actually, a lot of them were murdered in the concentration camps. Not his immediate, but that's where his grandma was born. Anyway, there's a wonderful German movement toward reconciliation that's taking place right now that's very, very moving. Anyway, I just want to say that this is the first time that I think that in the 35 years that I've lived here that we've had this kind of experience, and I really feel it's very important that we're solidly against it. I'm very proud of our city council, but it's a countywide issue and it's a national issue as well. So we have to stand firm. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you for sharing some of your personal story as well. Thank you. And I do also want to say thank you to everyone who came out and shared in their very specific personal ways around how they felt and how the racist behavior affected them. So, and I think Chief Scott and Nestor also shared around the resources that are available for people who are being affected by racist behavior or the hate incidents that don't quite get to crimes. There are still plenty of people who can help out, and that is really important. So. Okay, moving forward to the consent agenda, which is non-controversial in theory. We do have one item that I believe Vice Mayor Marks will be recusing herself from. Vice Mayor?
Yes, 5C, the annual special tax levy report for the City of San Luis Obispo Community Facilities District regarding San Luis Ranch. And I live in San Luis Ranch, so I'm going to actually leave the room for that discussion. If there is a discussion or the vote, whatever. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other items that would like to be pulled or discussed? All right. So let's go ahead and I'll move to approve items 5A through, public comment. So sorry. Just ready to move it along. Do we have any public comment for the consent agenda, City Clerk?
No, we do not.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and make the motion to move forward and approve 5A through 5J minus 5C. Is there a second? Councilmember Pease?
Are you wanting to pull that item for separate vote and discussion? Otherwise, I understand that we can move the entire consent and then Vice Mayor Marks can just, am I correct? Yeah.
I'm fine with
So
that
I
if you
think
don't
we
have
can move
public
the-
comment on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll move the entire consent calendar.
Sounds good. I'll second that. City Clerk, can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Pease?
Yes.
Mayor Stewart?
Yes.
Councilmember Francis? Yes. Councilmember Shorsman? Yes. Vice Mayor Marks?
Yes, except I'm recusing on 5C.
Perfect. Thank you. And the motion passes as mentioned. Now we'll move forward to item 6A, which is our public hearing and business item section. This is the 2022 to 2023 Storms After Action Report and Post-Incident Action Plan. We have Fire Chief Todd Tuggle and Emergency Manager James Blattler to present the report. Thank you.
There we go. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. It's our pleasure to sit here before you and present on the after action report. And this will actually be a two-part process, the after action report on the January storms, and we'll follow that up with the update to the storm damage and repairs, which will be brought to you by the Public Works Director, Matt Horn. One note of distinction, the first part of this presentation is just regarding the January storms. The January storms and the March storms were two separate events, and so this after action review will just cover the first portion. However, the follow-up presentation from Director Horn will involve events that occurred during both because of some ambiguities with how they were dealt with. But I did just want to make that clarification. This is a recommendation for receive and file, and we will wrap up this portion of the presentation with a short period of time for questions. And with that, I will pass this off to Emergency Manager Blattler, who's going to give you the details of the presentation.
Thank you, Chief. Madam Mayor, members of council, I'm pleased to be here this evening to present the 2022-23 Storms After Action Report and Post-Incident Improvement Plan, which, as Chief mentioned, covers the period under the FEMA designated incident period of December 27th through January 31st. And really what we're here to talk about, I can go on for a long period of time covering this report. It's something I'm very passionate about. But however, I'm going to be providing a brief overview and summary of the report and improvement plan and purpose behind it, how the plan was developed, some of the limitations of the plan, a summary of the response efforts that were taken, a summary of the events, report highlights, really the meat and potatoes of the report, which is challenges and strengths assessment, and finally the post-incident improvement plan. So beginning with the purpose, first and foremost, this report is not intended to judge success or failures, but rather identify and assess areas of improvement so that way we as an organization can respond to future emergencies better. And so that's really the intent of the item. And it is required by the California Code of Regulations whenever the city proclaims a local emergency for an event that the state also declares an emergency over, is required to have an after action report and submitted to the state. So we met that requirement. It was provided to Cal OES in June and was also shared with our operational area coordinators, the County Office of Emergency Services as well. It's also best practice in emergency management to complete an after-action report and improvement plan anytime that you activate an emergency operations center. And there's really three solid reasons why this is done. One, it allows an evaluation and codifying the lessons learned, and it also provides a structure for improvement. But one of the really important things that I find valuable about the report is that it provides a tool for future employees. It can be decades that can span across activations of EOCs. We've been very fortunate that it's been that long as a city that we've had to activate our EOC, and let's hope that it would continue to be that place. We will be ready if necessary. However, this is a good tool for those future staff members to be able to look back and see what precipitated the emergency, the events of the emergency, and the actions that the city took prior to, during, and after the incident. So the report development and limitations, the feedback process to inform this report began back in January and was very extensive. And it was an accumulation of a number of different interactions, from a city staff survey that was sent out to all city employees, direct conversations, emails, department compiled reports, and a comprehensive debrief from the city leadership team. And also some direct partner agency outreach to be able to get some input from those external stakeholders to be able to weigh in and give input on things that worked well and didn't work well. And so the report does provide some significant field level events that took place, but generally speaks to more of a higher level management and incident management and activities done by the Emergency Operations Center and Public Works Department Operations Center. Some of the limitations with the report, while a comprehensive effort was made to collect feedback, there is potential that some items were missed. And however, the lack of identifying those issues here doesn't preclude the city as an organization to take action on anything that surfaces that we may have missed or comes up after the fact. And a lot of times that could happen after reports are made because people see them and say, hey, what about this? And so it does not stop us from adding that to the list of items that we can take action on. There are expectations that some challenges will exist when we go out and activate that post-incident improvement plan. Much of the work is actually already underway, but there will likely be challenges at getting those accomplished. It could be resource requirements, staff time, but staff will work to overcome those challenges as they come up and look for external either funding opportunities or partnerships to help overcome those challenges as well. So the report starts out with really a summary of events and response activities, which includes a weather and incident summary, breaks apart the incident period between January 27th or December 27th and January 31st, really 4 distinct weather periods. And so that first one was the 27th through January 7th. And what I call that really was that saturation period where the city received a large amount of rain in just that amount of time. Over 6 inches of rain was felt, and that led to the January 8th to January 10th period, which really was the critical impact period where that saturation existed, and then we were hit with a very large amount of rainfall in a short amount of time with high winds and a damaging weather event. That was followed by a secondary significant event, fortunately not as impactful as that January 9th day. However, there were impacts citywide, and a lot of response was necessary to mitigate those conditions. And then finally, it was ended between January 17th and 31st, where fortunately we saw a large break in the weather activity, saw less than a half an inch of rainfall during that period of time. So after the weather and incident summary, there's response activities that are highlighted, and that's sectioned out into 3 areas. field summaries, which includes actions from the Public Works, Utility, and Public Safety departments. And then it's also the Emergency Operations Center activities. And finally, highlight some of the pre-EOC activation activities, as the city was very active in anticipating the weather events that occurred during the incident period and taking action ahead of time, which we'll briefly cover. So during the event, the city did leverage a number of plans. We completed an update to the emergency operations plan in 2022, not too much earlier before the event took place. And this plan was leveraged quite a bit. I would say that there were several plans that we could have had more training on that would have helped our response, and we'll be sure to continue to try to do that. In the near future, we have an EOC training scheduled in October, and we'll be looking to exercise those plans at that time. However, they were very useful. Additionally, the Public Works Storm and Flood Response Plan was leveraged, and while this is a bit of an older plan, it was very useful and provided a lot of utility for the Public Works Department. They are looking at updating that plan, as it was created many years ago and hasn't had a comprehensive update for some time, and I know that staff is looking to update that, which is highlighted within the report. And finally, that there were several incident action plans and EOC action plans created associated with the emergencies. And as required with the after action report, recovery activities to date are highlighted within the report. You're going to get a little bit more of a detailed overview from Public Works Director Horn after this, as Chief Tuggle had mentioned. And really what that highlights is the fact that the recovery started really on that first day on January 9th, and being able to collect really important damage estimates, documentation, and also standing up the recovery branch of the organization. Now getting into really what I call the heart of the report, and that's the strengths and challenges assessment. And that covers really 8 functional areas of the response, including the Emergency Operations Center, the Public Works Department Operations Center, internal and external communications, external agency coordination, relevant plans, training, recovery, and incident-specific actions. To highlight some of these items, wanted to cover first the strengths. You will see communications on both sides of this table, and you'd be hard-pressed not to find communications as a challenge on any after-action report during an emergency. However, there were many areas that it was a strength of the city, and some of that included the coordination calls that occurred prior to the event, a lot of the public outreach, although I would say that it could always be improved. There was a robust effort to get the communication out throughout the community. And additionally, the response was very robust from the field level all the way up to the council level, in responding quickly during that, especially January 9th day, to be able to come in and mobilize. And so that rapid response really allowed the city to respond effectively in a rapid manner. There was very significant homeless outreach that occurred prior to that January 9th date, and we are confident that outreach had a high likelihood of saving lives. And we really wanted to highlight that as an important part of our response prior to the event, because it's one of the biggest challenges. You have a large population group living in an area that's not established like addresses. And so our mobile crisis unit, our community action team, and city rangers spent a lot of time during not great conditions going into the creeks and conducting that outreach. Most individuals fled when they heard the coming impacts. Some did not, but luckily we were able to document those locations to be able to check on those once things got dire later on in the incident period. The next item is the rapid damage estimate, as I kind of mentioned, and part of the success was really due to the support from the IT department in developing a mobile application that could be used for damage estimates. And that was done more than a year in advance of this storm. And so we were able to quickly operationalize that with the GIS staff and the IT staff, and putting that into the hands of field team members. And that led to rapid damage estimates, and fortunately helped move along the requests to the governor and to the president for declaring those major disasters and bringing the aid programs that come along with it through FEMA. And finally, that partner agency relationships that occur really helped the city staff solve problems. Now, there were challenges with those relationships, but being able to have those relationships pre-established, one of the great opportunities for us to do that was with our trip to FEMA last year and being able to work with those area partners and have those people on a first name basis and make those phone calls. And that was really helpful during the incident period. Now, moving on to some of the challenges. Communications again. So one of the first items that we discovered as a challenge was on January 9th in the early morning hours, and that is our ability to reach all city staff members to notify of an emergency event. Emails went out to notify what was going on. However, most staff members didn't discover those emails until they arrived at work that morning. And so we'll be looking at identifying applications to be able to conduct those notifications, most likely on a mobile platform. And that's one of the items listed in our improvement plan. Additionally, there were communication gaps that occurred between the Department Operations Center and the EOC in the early hours, and that led to field staff in the Department Operations Center not being supported at the highest level. And quickly in that evening, it was identified that those communication gaps occurred, and within the next day, a lot of those were solved. But it was something worth noting because it did cause some delays. And the next item with communication really was about the floodgate information made available to our business community. So earlier proactive information about the floodgate program likely would have resulted in more floodgates being deployed, or at least allowed some business owners to figure that situation out, learn more about the program, and maybe get it standing up by that time. And so you'll be hearing about some of that program expansion in just a moment. Moving on to the DOC location. The DOC, the Department Operations Center for Public Works, is located at the Corporation Yard, which is very suited to be able to manage operational response from Public Works. However, it is in a floodplain. And so quickly during January 9th, discovered that that wasn't going to be very operational because of the flooding, and moved the DOC, or Department Operations Center, to the Ludwig Community Center, and caused some operational delays. Next was sheltering was a struggle. Red Cross has many pre-identified established agreements with local partners to be able to stand shelters up. However, they struggled to find partners that were willing to honor those pre-existing agreements. It's a big focus of the county, Office of Emergency Services, and Red Cross to help solve that problem and really get partners that are able to say yes and honor that when it comes. Also, sheltering our unhoused community members was a challenge, as those Red Cross evacuation shelters aren't generally equipped to be able to house that community group, and the city had to highly rely on our local nonprofit groups to be able to come together and figure out a regional solution for that issue that was encountered. Our road closure dashboard was a challenge on especially January 9th, as some of that information was delayed and inaccurate at times because of the delays in information. So there were road closures that were lifted that weren't updated, and part of that was not having a GIS technician with the Public Works Department, and so it was an issue that was solved pretty quickly. Finally, facility limitations for the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center. It is limited in space and size and some technology limitations, and it did impact some operational efficiencies. Staff adapted very well and were able to overcome it, and there are ways that we can overcome it, but is worth noting. So the post-incident improvement plan is really set there to solve those challenges that were observed. And so 27 actions were identified. They come with defined priority levels, identify resources needed, and provides a targeted timeline for completion. So some of the items to highlight out of those 27, the improvement plan highlights I've talked about a little bit already. These aren't in order of priority, but are listed as really some of the 6 high priority items that were identified. 3 of the others, a lot of work has either been done to solve it or is ongoing. But first, identifying and implementing an EOC management software program. We do have the skeleton program of that within Microsoft Teams. And really what really needs to happen is be able to make a decision that this is the platform to solve that and improve a common operating picture among all levels of responders. And training is going to be essential in being able to make sure that that's operationalized. I mentioned the Floodgate program resources. We're in the middle of working on a PSA about the Floodgate program, and also staff is already planning a flood readiness night to take place this fall that'll have a lot of information about that. Next, as I mentioned, the shelter location reliability improvements. We'll be collaborating with the county Office of Emergency Services to help solve this problem, because it's something that every municipality within the county takes ownership of or should take ownership of. And it's really our community members that we're looking to assist with these evacuation shelters. And so that'll be a high priority item. The next is the sandbag program improvements, exploring them at least. And they're currently, sand is provided at sandbag fill locations, but community members are required to bring their own sandbags to fill. So there are some reasons why having sandbags, around the city doesn't work super well, because they can decay and they become not effective. But a lot of community members did find some challenges in securing sandbags because of the sudden surge in demand. So we'll be exploring ways at making sure that we can provide that resource potentially for community members, and also looking for potential volunteer opportunities to have community members helping other community members filling up those sandbags. I mentioned the mass notification system for staff members. That'll be an important one that we'll work with our partners in the police department. And finally, establishing a protocol for creek encampment clean out or outreach and evacuations. And so we were very successful with the outreach, and we're able to accomplish that, but we don't have a set really protocol for doing it. And in the assessment of our response in discussions with our homeless services manager, have found that we can probably make it a lot more efficient of a process if we do have a protocol established ahead of time. So I know it's a lot of information and it's a long report. I appreciate all your time in reviewing it. I think it'll be a helpful document moving forward. But that is the little bit longer than brief summary of the report. And once again, we come to the recommendation to receive and file the after action report and post-incident improvement plan.
Thank you so much. It's okay that it wasn't brief. It was a very intense time, and we appreciate all the information. Councilmember Francis.
Thank you. I just wanted to start by saying thank you to you all, not just for the presentation this evening, but for what was an incredible amount of work and really admirable work during all of the storms, both in January and March, and just really admire all of you and the hard work you put in. My question is, out of all of our top priority improvements that we have on the improvement plan, how do we feel about our readiness for a potential upcoming winter, which feels like it's already just around the corner, remarkably? Do we feel like we're in a good position for our upcoming winter?
Yeah, I would say that the awareness level among the community is much higher than it has been in decades, which is a huge help. The Public Works Department has done amazing work in our creeks to help mitigate a lot of the impacts that have occurred, and the work's still ongoing. And so you'll hear more information about that. I believe as an organization, we are much more prepared to respond to these incidents and quickly adapt to the community needs, from the outreach level to the response level. So I would say we're much more prepared than we were a year ago.
Sorry, if I could just, I think Matt Horn might be best prepared to answer some of those questions. He can talk about some of the projects, because I think, and if you don't mind.
Yeah, is he doing the second part of the presentation?
Yeah, so if you,
can we just hold off on the questions?
Yeah, we can hold off on.
Okay, cool. You don't have to hold off on all the rest of the questions. Or is it all for nothing for them?
Oh, that was my only question.
Oh, okay.
How you're feeling about readiness for that.
Okay, got it. Do you want to do the presentation now, or answer the question now?
I think I'd rather do the presentation
That's
and then
what I-
go with the questions because I think the context might help.
Perfect.
So,
Thank you. All right. If no other questions for the chief and emergency manager, we'll move to the second half of the presentation.
Madam Mayor, members of council, Matt Horn, Public Works Director, and I don't know if you heard on January 9th it rained. So we're here to talk about some of the things that happened on that day, a couple months after that, and honestly, that whole winter period that we had last winter period was big, and I'll go through that a little bit for you as well. James, we go to the next slide, please. So this one was kind of fun. So I was, my favorite rain gauge, or actually my favorite creek gauge in the city is the Marsh Street Bridge, and you probably know why from the January 9th event, but my favorite rain gauge is the Cal Poly rain gauge, and that's because it has 152 years of data on it. And so it has a robust set of data. And if you look at it, it has monthly information, and last rain year, we received quite a lot of rain. So if you look at the rain that we received monthly in January, it was about 18 inches. And if you look at what we got in March, it was about 15 inches. But in cumulative, we were over 48 inches of rain. In like the 152 years of history that we have at that rain gauge, that's the second biggest year. So we were 6 inches shy of beating the record, which occurred in 1969. And so in 1969, our streets looked a bit like that, so there's water, everywhere. Our frequency, you can see the cumulative amount of rain. The graph onto the right, it kind of shows over the years how much cumulative rain we got over a rain period. So we had a big rain year. So the other important thing about 1969, just so you can kind of see the scope and scale of what we were dealing with, is, of course, you see our streets being flooded right there. But 1969 was the year that Lopez Dam was built. It was completed 3 months before that event. It filled. Lopez became a lake in 1969 because of this rain year. And so we just missed that by 6 inches. So lots of rain we received. So I kind of beat that one up. But so in January 9th, we received a 25-year event. So statistically, that's something that can happen every 4%. There's a statistical probability of that happening 4% each year. And so you look at it, it's a 25-year event. It happened in 2023. The last time we had an event that scale was in 1998. So historically, the event period matches our statistical information, and calculation-wise, it does too. So to me, it says that we have some good data, we have a good model, and our predictions as of right now are kind of matching what we're seeing, both recent and historically, and over the longer term. But obviously, we do have a work effort to update those models and manuals in the future. So moving on to the next slide. So over the rain period, so it started raining in September 22, and it finished in June 2023. So a long rain period. And over that period of time, we had 204 public sites that were damaged in some form or the other. So we've been working since probably September 22, a lot in December, and a lot through March to try to complete those repairs. So we've got 180 complete of the 204 that were itemized, found, and cataloged. So right now we have 24 sites left. Of the 24 sites, there's 9. They're kind of like on the trails. There's some open space things that we need to do and create, but in totality, they're fairly small. Of those 24, 15 are heavy civil type construction projects, things that we need to complete. I just want to kind of give you a brief overview of some of those. If you can hit the next slide. So this slide just kind of, it gives you an area reference to some of the issues that we have of the 15. And so, of course, we have, well, actually, let me back up a little bit. Of the 15 that we have right now, we have 2 that are complete. And so that's the 141 Cuesta or the 533 Broad Street. That was a constructed channel where the block wall fell over. And then you probably have seen 533 Broad Street. It's the riprap bank stabilization in the new park area that we're about ready to construct. So both those projects are complete. We have 2 under construction right now. And so that's the San Luis Drive project. If you haven't seen it, you should go out there. It's a pretty massive undertaking. And then, of course, our Pismo Johnson bank stabilization projects too. So we have 11 that are kind of in a form of project development. And so that's anywhere from, scoping, getting designs going through the design queue. And so as we start on our projects, initially the design is, or the scope is, pretty wide open. We're not exactly sure what we need to do. And as we work through that, we get better and better estimates. So that's where we're at with a lot of the projects that are in the queue right now. So 11 of them need to be completed. So you'll see they're dispersed throughout the city in different locations, but they're largely around concentrated flow or our creek systems. If you want to jump to the next slide, I'll kind of walk us through perhaps our biggest project that's under construction right now is San Luis Drive. And of course, you can see this was actually taken prior to the March event, where the March event exacerbated this failure. So it's a large kind of, you're looking at that dirt right in the center of the photo. That's the area that failed. That's the area that's holding up San Luis Drive. That's the area that has a gas line, diesel lines, and the only in and out connection for, I believe, 186 people. Ran right next to the high school. So we jumped into this pretty quickly. And so actually, can you flip to the next slide? So right now, this is a photo of what we're doing out there. We're building basically a large pile wall. And this large pile wall will protect the roadway, all those facilities, the high school for a long period of time. And so we are working at a pretty rapid pace for this. The design development for this took a couple months. And this typically would take several years if City Manager Johnson was wanting it to get done very fast. So this is working at a records pace right there. The other side I want to just kind of pop to you or bring to your attention is Perfimo Creek. And so actually that's the next slide. Yeah. So Perfimo Creek, this is the area that we need to focus in if we want to, and I know I want to, but we need to focus in here to try to address the Laguna Lake area. So you probably remember during both the March event and the January event, there was issues in Oceanaire neighborhood along Gallion where there was water backing up into the street. This is our solution to address that. This creek reach right here was realigned in the 1960s. I think we're doing a lot better job in our creek management now than we did in the 60s. Now we take into account sediment transport and dealing with those issues, water velocities, so that doesn't create scour and depositions. So what we're dealing with in Perfimo Creek in this area between Laguna Lake and LOVR is there was a massive amount of silt dropped into that lake or dropped into the stream right there. So the problem in that area is that the pipes that run into the lake are lower than the water surface elevation due to all the deposition of material. So water won't flow; it stays in the streets, and that's why we're trying to address this area prior to an extended rain period. If you can flip to the next slide right there. And so this is so basically our scope of work in this area is going to be removing a large amount of debris. It's about 4.5 feet of sediment that's accumulated. There. We're going to do a phased approach in order to try to get the work done as quickly as possible, and it's currently under design. So there's a couple different areas that we're focusing in on there, but I just want to give you a flavor for some of the stuff that's the big heavy civil that's under construction right now, and then areas that we're looking at to try to address in the near future for storm work. And with that, of course, I'm available for questions or I'm sure these guys up here are as well.
City Manager Johnson.
Yeah, I just want to fully answer Councilmember Francis's question. I think that gives you kind of a a glimpse. I think those projects are probably 5 years before we'll finish a lot of those, and so I think Matt Horn and the rest of the team have done an excellent job. And I got briefed last week on prioritizing the projects that we think have the most significant exposure in terms of infrastructure failure that then would result in loss of property or that would threaten life. There are some other areas that, just given time and the amount of resources, we're not going to be able to complete before this winter. And I share the council and emergency service manager Blattler and I often exchange kind of these recondite meteorological and climatological forecasts about what's going to happen this winter. And we're very concerned about the superheating of the ocean. And so, but I'm always, want to remind the community that, downtown was not designed for, significant rain events. Matt, correct me, I think downtown we can accommodate roughly about a 22-year, is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, flood event. And so we will see flooding downtown, and hence why we continue to reinforce the need for businesses to take the necessary precautions. I did have a sidebar conversation with Matt as we were making the presentation. There are some things that we might want to bring back to the council. We know sandbags were an issue. There are machines that do sandbag loading. And so we may be in the position financially to make some investments. So I know the team will be looking at, what are the ways we can implement all of this. But I just wanted to couch the kind of the bigger context, within all the projects that we're moving as quick as we can. But I do think there's going to be some residual exposure. I think on the infrastructure side, I think on the capacity side, in terms of our readiness, I think we've learned a lot. I think we'll be better prepared. And we have a lot of new staff. So James just recently sent out, he's doing a great job kind of inventorying all the emergency readiness competencies. And there's a lot of city employees that have no idea what SEMS and NIMS and EOC is and all the other acronyms that go along with, running emergency operations centers. So it is a muscle that we need to continue to exercise for us to be ready.
Thank you. And I've got Michelle next. Sorry.
I just wanted to follow up on that.
Okay. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, really impressive, the projects and the speed that you all are getting those done. I kind of just wanted to circle back for a moment, because a lot of the 27 items on the priority list, they have these really ambitious timelines, less than a year on some of the highest priority ones. And it sounds like we're making incredible progress. So I was really just wanting to kind of check in that, do we feel like we're meeting our goals, particularly around the communication, the better coordination around Red Cross shelter, and then delineating different kinds of shelters for different parts of our population, and just seeing where we are with some of these big priority goals that you all have laid out?
Yeah, I would say first address the shelter issue. So it's a challenge.
Yep.
And so I don't think anybody has the expectation that that's going to be resolved within, a short period of time. It's a very big priority for the County Office of Emergency Services and Red Cross, so efforts being focusing on that. And I mean, I think realistically, we can help identify locations that are a little bit more reliable, but that's going to be an ongoing process. Fortunately, much of the items within the list really only involve staff time. And fortunately, the investments that the council has made has improved staff capacity to be able to handle these items that come up. And it might just be a little bit of reprioritization of duties over the next, over the timeline established in this plan. But I'm confident that the timelines in the plan are realistic.
Thank you so much for all of your hard work.
Thank you, Councilmember Shorsman.
Yes, I have one question I think that's more public works related, and then one that's more, or a couple that are more emergency management related. So the public works one first, an impressive a large list of projects that have both been completed and, still a few big ones that need to be completed. Notably absent, as I'm on the Zone 9 committee, is the Mid-Higuera bypass. So how does that figure into, what is the city's responsibility in that, and how does that, is that in addition to, because I didn't see it on your slides?
Right, yeah, actually, I was the project manager for the Mid-Higuera Bypass project when Dave Romero was on Zone 9 and kind of started it up, so I'm familiar with it. And it's gone through several project managers since then. That's the speed, so that was probably 2006. So that's the speed a normal kind of creek-related improvement project takes through just jurisdictions and the community. So that would be, what, 17-ish years? So to answer your question, no, it's not on our list. Yes, it is on our work plan. We are working on that. The plans and specs are, I believe they are very close to being completed, and we want to deliver that next construction period. I believe that would be the 24 time period, because there's actually a bridge replacement in there. It's really so we will be putting in a large amount of actually the community, because we have a lot of grant funds for that, DWR funds and also Zone 9 funds, helping us facilitate that project. But the amount of money that we're putting into that area is going to have a big payback in our ability to withstand an event like January 9th. So that will help us keep water in the creeks, and that's where the damage occurs, is when it comes out of the creek. So January 9th event's great. We live in a watershed that cannot convey a 100-year event and keep everything in the creek banks. And so there will be future events that pop out in that area and in other places.
So there's a lot of work being done, and then there's still another really big project that isn't even figured in. So there's a lot of.
And I think, Madam Mayor, that hence why we added to, and Councilmember Schwartzman, why we added into your work program the idea of a stormwater utility. Clearly the need for what and scope of what we need to do. And, I remind everyone that we're the 16th oldest city in California all the time, because it's just helpful to think about how old our infrastructure is. And that includes, the fourth utility that's unfunded, which is stormwater. And so we're I would say, doing what we can with piecemealing the resources together, but longer term solutions are really going to be needed, and we're going to need some funding sources to really get at the root of the problem.
Thank you. And then my other question, more around emergency management and I guess citywide preparation. It was mentioned in the report that depth of staffing for some of the key, especially the key EOC positions, but also some of the line positions was an issue. And I know that in my own career and life in public health, that is an issue for lots of organizations. So just wondering, city manager mentioned how we have a lot of new staff. There's a lot of items around training. So need to train up the new staff, but in a small organization, do we have any action items around how we can bolster a pretty small staff so that we have enough redundancy in positions to not burn everybody out, to be quite blunt?
Yeah, so definitely, or fortunately, we didn't encounter the challenge ourselves. I mean, Public Works definitely strained long months, weeks, months of response, but specifically in the report about the EOC staffing model, and it mentioned the fact that if we went into 24-hour staffing, that we would have been significantly challenged. And so a big roster for the essential EOC positions. We do have pretty good depth in a lot of those positions. We're working on expanding that depth, but really it's the discipline on the early response to not have everybody come in on the initial response and having that plan in place. And so that'll be part of the solution, is making sure that those second and third identified employees that would fill a specific position are waiting in the wings for when those overnight hours or after the first 24 hours have occurred after the start of an incident are ready to come in with a fresh face and be able to take over. And so that'll be part of the plan. It's an important item to address. So thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, Emergency Service Manager Blattler and I have had some discussions about some tabletop exercises that assume the third shift is there. So it's not the department heads or myself acting as Emergency Services Director, but having program managers who are starting in those roles. And so they get to start an operational period, get to write the incident action plan, get to do all that work. And so that we're really starting to tune up that part of the organization, because really until you've done it and you're in the seat, it's really kind of difficult to really understand kind of how all the pieces work together.
And I could just add one bit on that, because it was kind of a public works, a bandwidth issue. And through the employee assessment survey, we identified that training was a weakness just organization-wide. We've identified 61 different trainings that we can be providing staff in public works that can teach them about infrastructure, teach them about hotspots, teach folks about how the creek system works, because there was a void of kind of local knowledge, skill, and ability at different levels throughout the organization to have the bandwidth necessary to have the second or third shift. So that's one of the things that we're focusing in on as well, to try to address that issue.
Yeah, thank you for recognizing that depth issue as an important one, because it's a hard one to tackle, especially in a smaller organization.
If I could add one note to that, one opportunity we have, and you talked about, the city manager talked about being in the seat, is we are, as a fire department and as a city, very active with the mutual aid system within the county, with the county incident management team. And an example is we've had non-safety members or employees as part of that incident management team that can actually deploy with that emergency management or incident management team to gain that experience. A recent example is the search for Caldone up in North County. We actually sent our emergency manager, who's a PIO. We've had other members of the city staff participate in that incident management team to get, as city manager said, that important seat time, so that they bring that experience back here to the city when we need it the most.
And not to labor the point too much, but I did want to bring up a really important resource that we have available to us. Say an incident occurred right now, we don't have that well vetted out plan on staffing models, is the emergency management mutual aid system. And so that also exists for specifically credentialed emergency managers to come in and staff specific positions within an EOC that can be leveraged. And that's accomplished through reaching out to our operational area coordinators at county OES. So thank you.
Vice Mayor Marks.
Thank you. Well, I realize that this is an after incident report that we're looking at, and it's all focused on floods because that was the incident. But I'm also just aware of the fact that fire season is probably with us always now. And so I have a couple of questions. One is, with the know your evacuation zone, how is that? I mean, I suppose you could have evacuations with floods as well. How are our residents supposed to know, besides saying, oh, go to the website? Well, all right, but is there any kind of plan to communicate with residents in that kind of specific way, so that they know how to access the help that they're going to need if evacuation were to happen?
So the knowing your zone is really a dashboard for just that, knowing your zone. It doesn't bring notifications, which is the most important part. of evacuating, is being able to notify people of that
Okay.
occurring. And so the alert and warning system within our county is managed by the County Office of Emergency Services. So there's a whole suite of programs that are used, ranging from reverse 911 to wireless emergency alerts, all the way down to what they call route alerting, where you have essentially people in vehicles or on feet walking door to door, driving through neighborhoods, alerting. And so those would be leveraged, but it really comes down to public outreach, and that's going to be coming out quite a bit over the next couple of months to educate people to know, basically having that plan in place, so that way when they do get that alert and they do get notified that it's time to evacuate or that you might need to evacuate, that they are readily able to do that. And there's a lot of planning that goes with that. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, especially those with disability access and functional needs. And so a big part of our communication is reaching those groups and educating them that when they hear an evacuation warning, that really is time to go for you. And so you'll be seeing a lot of that come out in the coming weeks and months, and it'd be a continual communication effort. I hope I answered your question. I don't know if there was something else specifically.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, of course, everyone is thinking about what happened on Maui, and
Yeah. I would say also is that when we do encounter severe weather events like they had going on prior to the event, is really having an incredibly robust communication that goes out, notifying people of the potential threat that's coming with that weather. And having that sense of awareness prior to a fire, I think, would be a really critical resource in getting people moving earlier. From what has been seen, there was a high amount of lack of awareness going on among visitors, people that are just arriving on vacation, that didn't have a sense on what was happening. So it's a challenge when you have visitors, but it's something that I know we'll be focusing on, that when we do encounter weather events that could precipitate that type of a disaster, that it's a very strong and robust communication effort that goes out.
Okay, I had another question about the location of the EOC, and maybe this is for the city manager as well. Are we considering, I'm not sure if escrow has closed on the Walnut building, or are we considering permanently moving the EOC someplace else?
Madam Mayor and Councilmember Marks, the answer is yes, and we did close, and so we are happy and excited to have that, and I'll invite Chief Scott to come forward. So we're on a two-step process for our acquisition, and I want to thank the council for that investment. So we've engaged a designer to work with us on just activating the building, including preparing for EOC, and then we'll embark on the second phase, but I'll let Chief Scott, who's taking the lead on this, fill you in.
Thank you, City Manager Johnson and Madam Mayor, members of the council. Yes, happy to report that we have closed escrow. We've already started, as the city manager mentioned, started some space planning. What can go in there? When can it move over? But primary to this whole operation is how fast can we set up some form of an EOC? If something happened tomorrow, would we be ready? No, not yet, but we're getting very, very close. And so IT has been a great partner at getting some of the basic infrastructure in there so that we can start operating. We do have some temporary furniture, so we're getting really close. That will be phase one, just to get it turnkey. And the next phase will be to have a little bit more, excuse me, permanent facilities to operate out of for an extended period of time. Thank you again for your support on the project, and really looking forward to it coming to fruition for us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That's encouraging. Okay, and then my third question, it has to do with a shelter problem. The American Red Cross locally, it's really a volunteer organization. We probably all know somebody who's on the board or has been. And I'm just concerned that we would be relying so heavily on this nonprofit, this local nonprofit. And I'm, thinking about what happened with the COVID response, how Cal Poly was able to create a shelter, which, as it turned out, was not necessary to ever use. But is there any kind of like more how do I say, more efficient and capable kind of structure that we could appeal to in terms of the sheltering issue?
Yeah.
Besides this local volunteer group.
So that's absolutely a challenge, and the challenge became a lot worse during the pandemic. And so care and shelter is being very much more heavily resourced statewide. And so fortunately our county, I don't know if they've already received or are receiving basically a care and shelter trailer to help support establishing a shelter and getting the infrastructure needed to get a shelter stood up. Really what needs to be looked at is making sure that we can leverage during times of disaster service workers, city employees to staff these shelters as needed. Part of that is training, so getting staff trained or being able to identify a just-in-time training to be able to staff these shelters. It's going to take a whole community effort to be able to solve this problem. And absolutely, we're not resting all our laurels on the American Red Cross's ability to staff and support those shelters. They do a fantastic job. They'll always be there to help bring us aid. However, we're not just making the assumption that they're going to solve all the problems of care and shelter. It is our responsibility as a city to take care of our community members in that regards, and it's something that we'll be focusing on and not just deferring to their capabilities.
Okay, thanks a lot. That's
I
all.
think City Manager wants to add to that.
Yeah, a couple of things. I think there's, a couple aspects. One, I think, with the Red Cross, one of the impacts from COVID is that we lost a lot of our volunteer corps and the ability to train volunteers. And so I think there's a whole cadre of volunteers that need to get trained, that we need to kind of reestablish some of those norms around some of our just general civic responsibilities to each other and to our neighbors and to our community. And so that's something that we want to work on. But I think most importantly, to James's point, it's a discussion as we start to mature our volunteer program. Is there opportunity to create, because we've made some investments in developing databases of where volunteer interests lie, that we can then get some training for community volunteers, because we heard a lot from the community. How can I help? How can I help? How can I help? And what we really need is people who are trained to help and who are ready to help. And so that's something I think that, I'm wanting to explore with James and, our volunteer coordinator to see how can we activate that compassionate part of our community.
Thank you. That goes right into my questions. I appreciate my colleagues' questions. You asked a lot of them already, so thank you. But I think the volunteer side is a mixed bag. The sandbags thing, I get it. We can't store them forever because they would just fall apart. But we know every year winter comes at a certain time of the calendar. And so I'm just looking at how this is a great way to engage people that are under 18 that can't volunteer at a lot of places, for example, that want to and have a requirement at their schools. So I see like a lot of availability for us to be able to engage volunteers, but we have to have a plan for that. We have to have some strategic thought to that. And when I think about how many people wanted to help, as you mentioned, City Manager, the lack of depth that we're talking about of how many people we have employee-wise, some of the things maybe could be done by volunteers, and just trying to look at, we used to have CERT. I don't know if we ever wish to do that again. I think you went through training some people with that. And so I just see that there's some opportunities for us to have trainings that you don't actually have to provide. There are other entities in this community and in the regional community that can provide that training, and some will do it for free. So just trying to think of how do we, have you thought about engaging those type of volunteer opportunities?
Yeah, the answer is yes. And one of the things I really want to highlight as part of that is the Lease program, which really engages the Spanish-speaking community. And that's kind of the program a lot of times is where they bring in people who volunteer to train others in that field. So it's something that we have looked at, we'll continue to look at, and hopefully start to leverage in the near future.
I'd like to add on that. add on to that, Madam Mayor, that Kirsten's arrival has been impressive as the volunteer coordinator.
Yes.
But I think her first week here was in February or March, if I remember right.
Yeah, it was the day.
Oh, it was the day of.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, that's why I missed that. My apologies. But she has been an active participant. We have already met with her several times. We're part of her roadshow coming up here to talk about volunteerism and how that can work within the fire department at multiple levels. Vice Mayor Marks, you brought up wildfire and preparedness, and volunteerism is absolutely a cornerstone to preparedness on the wildfires, on the wildland side and the wildfire side. It's also a pivotal component of the storm response. I think one story that came out of the storms that was very moving, it was a story that was told at Good Morning Slow, was the community in Los Osos. That because of its location, it was very isolated, and really that community, that block, was serviced by the members on that block. And what we saw was a model that is neighborhood based. And I would say Kirsten in our preliminary conversations has been very receptive and very supportive of that concept, and something that I would expect us to investigate more and try to facilitate and foster that more. But that's going to be a long-term strategy that we're going to have to implement, and it's something that we can help facilitate, but ultimately comes down to the neighborhoods themselves engaging in that kind of community activism.
Absolutely. I think the community helping each other is important. And I also think when we talk about the amount of people who came to work similarly in the community, obviously not telephone trees, but some sort of ways that we can get a hold of each other, we will know more than the city, right? So how can we engage ambassadors early on for their communities and neighborhoods, I think is something that we could be doing now that doesn't have to be a large training for that matter. It's just who are your, don't tell us, but who are your friends and neighbors that you're going to connect with as part of the emergency kind of preparedness aspect. And then as far as the communication for the remaining 15 projects, Mr. Horn, I'm just, after today and hearing, the awesome slow in motion communication, and at the same time, the challenging parking safety parking challenging situation, how do we help our community know about these large 15 projects?
That's an excellent question. I can tell you that we've been moving fast and really been focusing on function. And so that's really been a reason of by delaying anything, there could be some profound failures. We're getting to a certain point that we can lift our heads up a little bit and start doing some more communications on these projects. Yeah, we haven't, and we should.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Do we have any public comment?
No, we do not.
Okay. Well, council deliberation time. Any deliberation you have, or just receive and file, call it good? Okay. Well, thank you so much for the great presentation, answering all of our questions. And wait, Councilmember Shoresman, did you have one more? Sorry.
Sorry. I just wanted to give this is an excellent report, very thorough, lots of detail, good, explanation of what went well and what we could do better on, and a great list of improvement actions. The one thing that I was sort of wondering about with the action item list is that it explains, what the area is, how much the time frame we anticipate, the priority. What it doesn't do is it doesn't sort of assign responsibility for each action item. I don't know if you have another version of it somewhere that sort of puts either a name or a position with who's responsible for making sure that that action item gets met, or if they all fall on your plate. But I'm just wondering if maybe that might be a good column to add, just so that you sort of have an accountability trail to go back to. That was my only real feedback.
Absolutely. So this is being translated over to an Excel basically tracking. But essentially, I'm owning these. I'm not going to be the one doing all the work because there's a lot of incredible work that needs to be done in here that's done through partnerships throughout the other city departments and staff and external agencies. But yeah, I'm going to be there minding the plan and making sure that these items follow through, and we'll be checking in on all those that are assisting. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Apologies for that. Ready to receive and file.
No problem. There's one more comment, City Manager Johnson.
Oh, I was just gonna chime in that we, going forward on an administrative basis, we're going to have meetings. And so part of what I'll be getting briefed on is both on what the progress is on the action items from this report, but also getting updates from Mr. Horn on the progress and then the updates on where we are in terms of our budget. So this will be carefully tracked. So for the council, at least on the budgetary side, you'll see a portion in your quarterly reports, the financial reports, just a brief overview of where we stand on storms. So that stays top of mind. And then we're happy as the mid-year report comes forward. If the council's interested, we can always give a progress update on how we're proceeding and making progress on the action items that James identified. So I just want to add that. So there is an administrative part, so it doesn't just all live on James's shoulder. But last, just for clarification, James, do we need for the record, for the minutes, anything for FEMA, a motion, or is receive and file just fine? Okay.
Thank you for sharing about the quarterly budget too. I think for the community, it's always nice to have the transparency that the city often does with our budget and what we're doing. So thank you so much. Thank you. All right, it is 8:14. We're gonna go ahead and take a 10-minute break and then we'll be back for bond. All right, well, welcome back, everybody. We will get back to the public hearing item of approving the sale of lease revenue bonds for the Cultural Arts District Parking Project. And Finance Director Emily Jackson will be presenting the report.
Thank you. Good evening. We've got a couple external guests joining via Zoom. I want to make sure they're there before we start.
Yes, hello.
Hi. Hi, so before I kick it off, I would like to introduce to you Sarah Hollenbeck up in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. Sarah is our financial advisor and the municipal advisor for this debt issuance. And then Trish Eicher is bond counsel from ORIC. She and Sarah have both been incredibly helpful and supportive on this issuance, provided a tremendous amount of guidance in addition to other folks on the financing team. They all met with all of you yesterday and will be participating tonight to answer some of what I anticipate to be the more detailed or technical questions on this, given that this is not something that the city does on a regular basis, and this is something that they routinely do and can probably better respond to some of the questions you might have this evening. So I will go ahead and share my screen. There we go. Okay, so of course tonight, as I'm sure you're aware, is a pretty big milestone in what is about a 20-year-long conversation about construction of a fourth parking structure in the city's downtown area. Tonight we will be seeking approval from you all, both as the City Council as well as the San Luis Obispo Public Financing Authority, to issue bonds in a not-to-exceed amount of $50 million for construction of the fourth parking structure and to distribute legal documents, including the preliminary official statement, as necessary. So wanted to kick off the presentation this evening with just an overview of the project, the project at hand and the primary reason for issuing the bonds that we are seeking authorization for this evening. Like I noted, after about 20 years of conversation and planning, we are finally at the phase where we are ready to construct the Cultural Arts District parking structure that will consist of approximately 397 spaces, including 41 EV charging stations, of course, in furtherance of the city's goals related to climate action and resiliency. The structure is really intended to anchor the downtown, the Cultural Arts District area of our downtown area, as well as support just general growth within the community. In addition to the structure being located on the property, it will also be right next door to the new Slow Rep Theater, which is dependent on the structure and is planned currently to open for performances in early 2027 once the structure is completed and they've had their opportunity to construct their facility. In addition, there is potentially a housing project located on the property that's in its very, very early stages. And so the focus tonight, of course, will be simply on the parking structure, as that is the only thing that the bond proceeds will be paid for, in addition to a refunding of prior bonds, which I'll discuss in a couple of slides. A lot of progress has been made already. If you've walked by the site recently, you'll notice that it has been prepared. There's been some undergrounding work done, and we are ready for construction at this point. All of the costs to date on the project have been paid using funds on hand, using PAYGO funding. Like I noted, we are at the construction phase in late July. On July 25th, Public Works hosted a bid opening for the project. We received 2 responsive bidders, and the low bid came in about $3.5 million under the engineer's estimate, which is practically unheard of at this point and a very good thing for the financing to come. Construction at this point is expected to commence in the fall and be completed 2 years later at the end of 2025. Before we talk a bit more about the project and the structure of the financing, I thought it would be helpful to include a bit of a market update, just given that that will factor heavily into the cost to issue the bonds. As we've talked about quite a bit recently and has been really well covered in the media, there's been a lot of up and downs in the market recently, and inflationary pressures has caused the Fed to raise the short-term rate on bonds over the past year. This slide shows on the left-hand side the current interest rates for AAA rated bonds versus what they have historically been. And so you'll see, again, quite a bit more fluctuation versus what has historically been true based on term to maturity of bonds. So as I noted, the primary purpose of the financing before your council this evening is to construct the parking structure. I want to be clear, again, just for your benefit and the public's benefit as well, that the proceeds from the bonds will only be used for construction of the parking structure, despite the fact that there are other planned projects on the same site. In addition to financing of the construction of the structure, we are also seeking authorization to potentially refund the 2012 series bonds without any extension to the final maturity on those. Now, the purpose of that is to generate a bit of net present value savings, but the larger purpose, and as we discussed yesterday when we met with you one-on-one, is that it will enable us to free up the Damon Garcia sports fields, which are currently the asset that is encumbered to secure those bonds. That's really important, not to the parking structure project, but to potential future debt issuances that we may undertake, especially as we continue to have conversations around the Prado interchange and the cost to construct that and how do we fund that. So the outstanding amount on the 2012 series bonds is about $2.4 million, and we estimate that Damon Garcia has a value of at least $10 million. And so we are over encumbered on that issuance, and it's a benefit to us in the long run to free up that asset so that we can combine it with others for a future large-scale issuance similar to the one we're considering tonight. As you will note in the resolutions, what we are seeking is a not to exceed amount of $50 million, as well as a high-end true interest cost of 5.25%. The reason for that is that we don't have control over how the bonds are priced, and we want to make sure that we take one shot at this when we go out to the market so that we don't have to, we can adjust for market conditions on the day that we go to sale, and that we don't have to return to your council for additional authorization should we not get enough. So it doesn't mean that we will be issuing the full 50 million, and it doesn't mean that our interest costs will be 5.25, but we're leaving room in case both or either of those things come true. And then finally, we are looking at a 30-year level debt service. And what that means is that we'll pay off the bonds over the next 30 years. And we are proposing to structure the debt service in a way that it's level, meaning that annual payments are typically pretty consistent over the life of the bonds, though not exact. So that provides us with the opportunity to plan better, to forecast better for our repayments, and also should generate a bit of savings on the repayment itself. So I'm going to spin quickly through a couple of slides with information that is already included in the staff report. This, again, just to kind of further articulate the reason for the not to exceed amount of $50 million. This is the current estimated project budget prepared by Public Works. You'll see that we already have some financing lined up. Public Works currently has an available budget of about $4.9 million, and the capital improvement plan that your council just adopted with adoption of the 23-25 financial plan includes additional funding, $1.5 million on July 1st of 2024, and then another $490,000 at the start of fiscal year 24-25. I'm sorry, 25-26. So like we talked about, this is a really big project for this community, for this city, and it's a high dollar value for us. We're not used to constructing projects of this size and cost. That said, I wanted to check in just to provide, some assurance that we are well within our policy limits and what we are required to factor in as we continue to, explore ways to fund projects over the coming years. The city has a pretty robust capital financing and debt management policy. Among the financial targets, there is a requirement that debt should only be incurred for one-time capital expenditures and not for ongoing operations. This project certainly falls within this. This is not something we plan to do on an annual basis. This is intended to be a one-time, maybe once every 20-year type of project. And so we definitely check that box. In addition, the city has financial targets that we look at as well. One of those is our percent of our annual debt service to the ratio of our annual debt service to our general fund revenues. The maximum on that is 15%. We are currently at about 1.6%, and with this additional financing, we'll be at 4%, so still well below the 15% policy maximum. In addition, we cannot have our outstanding debt exceed 2% of assessed valuation. The city's assessed valuation as of 21-22 was $11.8 billion. And so we've got quite a bit of room to maneuver in there. Current outstanding debt is about 0.2%. And with this additional debt, we'll be at 0.6%, which again is well within our policy and legal parameters and provides for the opportunity to issue additional debt in the future should that be necessary to fund additional projects. This table was included in the staff report as well, but wanted to highlight it again. This shows really the sources and uses of the proceeds of the bonds. The intent here is to really call out what is attributable to the parking structure construction versus the refunding of the 2012 bonds. We can talk in more detail about that if there are questions. And then this is a planned repayment schedule based upon, again, the level debt structure and for both issuances, showing in the third column, of course, what our annual debt service and then our total debt service over the life of the bond would be for the parking structure versus what is outstanding for the 2012 bonds that we are potentially looking to refund. So as we've talked about, a lease revenue bond is really an obligation of our general fund. That said, of course, we've had quite a bit of conversation about how do we actually pay the debt service back. And so despite the fact that this is an obligation of the general fund, our intent and based upon your council's support for phased parking rate increases as shown on this table, on this slide, the plan is to pay the debt back directly from the parking fund using the additional parking revenues generated from the parking rate increases that went into effect just about a month and a half ago on July 1st, and then the second round to go into effect on July 1st of 2025. Like I said, one of the purposes for, though not the primary purpose for the refunding of the 2012 bonds is to yield hopefully some net present value savings. And so the tables on this slide summarize what that might look like. But like I said, the primary benefit of the refunding again is to release the Damon Garcia Sports Field from its encumbrance and its lease obligations so that we can utilize that asset for a future debt financing should that become necessary. And again, one of the things I should note on the slide and applies to many of the slides in this presentation this evening is that these are all estimated numbers. So these are based upon what the market looked like at the beginning of the month. Things have changed still. It's kind of a moving target and we won't know exactly what everything looks like until we actually go and price and close the sale. And that's information that, as we discussed yesterday, we'll be including in Public Works' item on September 19th to actually award a construction contract. So one of the other requirements in issuing lease revenue bonds to finance these types of projects is that we identify an asset to lease in order to secure the financing. The idea here is that we're pledging an asset that the city already owns, and if for some reason we're unable to make our debt service payments, which we do not expect to be the case, but if that were the case, the investor might be able to take over the leased asset and hopefully make some money off of it from their perspective. So the requirement is that the leased asset has more value than the amount of the proposed debt issuance. So we're proposing this evening not to exceed amount again of $50 million. We had a commercial real estate broker recently perform what's called a broker's opinion of value, and they determined that the value of the Marsh Street Park parking structure is about $62 million, and it's actually about $75 million when you include the cost of the land as well as the improvements. So we've got more than enough value in that structure alone to secure both the financing that we're seeking this evening, as well as the refunding of the 2012 bonds, should we decide to go down that path based upon what things look like the day that we go to market. What that means is that, similar to where the Damon Garcia sports fields currently sit, the Marsh Street parking structure will be encumbered for this financing and will then not be available to secure any future financings. So this slide is intended to demonstrate to you how all of the legal documents and all of the different parties that have been involved in this process interact with one another. The next slide includes all of the legal documents before your city council this evening, but wanted to just kind of focus especially on the lease part of it, which is, I think, one of the more complicated, just based upon the names of the documents part of this agreement, whereby the city leases an asset to the Public Financing Authority, and then the city rents back that asset, amortizing the value over time. The trustee collects those rental payments and then uses it to pay the debt service amount. So again, we can talk about that in a bit more detail if there are questions, and I've got our trustee advisors on hand to hopefully describe that more eloquently than I have this evening, but wanted to provide at least a snippet of what that looks like visually, hopefully to help everybody wrap their brains around a somewhat complicated process. Again, these are the documents associated with the financing that will need to be executed this evening. Both A and B, the resolutions for the City Council, as well as the resolution for you all sitting as the San Luis Obispo Public Financing Authority, are the documents that needed to be executed tonight. And then all of the other documents are in substantially final form, meaning that we feel like we've dotted most of our I's, crossed most of our T's, but we may need to go in and make some minor adjustments as things change prior to posting of the statement, preliminary official statement, which is really the major offering document, and hopefully something that you've all had the opportunity to review. And then finally, before we move on to what's coming next, got a bit of good news late last week. As noted in the staff report, we are required to obtain a credit rating for issuances like these. Standard & Poor's sent to credit rating analysts from Dallas and Denver to come to San Luis Obispo, which really does not happen very much. Usually we have to go to them if it's in person, but it was great to have two of the rating analysts from S&P here on July 31st. It was the first trip to San Luis Obispo for both of them. They both had very rave reviews. Their Uber drivers raved about it. We could not have paid somebody to do the job that Uber driver did, but I think that, you know, we had a really solid conversation. They were really happy overall, and late last week we got final word that they have given us a AA rating on these bonds. That's really, really important because the credit rating impacts the attractiveness of what we're trying to sell to investors, the attractiveness of our offering and our project, as well as the interest rate that we can get. And so that was a pretty significant milestone, a good outcome, and the report that I routed via agenda correspondence earlier today provides their summary essentially of why the rating is what it is, and of course highlights that we've got a stable local economy, strong financial profile, have done a lot of good work, I think, to develop policies and procedures to keep all of that up, and they also noted that we have currently a modest debt burden, which, as I mentioned yesterday, is unfortunately offset by long-term pension liabilities. But that's, of course, as we talked about in mid-May, something that all PERS agencies are dealing with at this point. And so it was a note that they made, but not a stated area of concern. So overall, I think a really positive rating there. So in closing, we've made a tremendous amount of progress on the kind of readiness for physical construction of the facility, but also on the financing. As I noted, July 25th was a big milestone also. Tonight will be a significant step forward in approving the lease revenue bonds, and shortly after we will be posting the preliminary official statement for review by investors, and then moving on to bond pricing and closing the week of September 12th. Our goal has always been that we will have financing on hand to actually award the contracts. That is still our hope, though I do want to note, and it was noted in agenda review earlier today, that it's taking quite a bit of time to get a title report for the Marsh Street structure, and that's something that we need to have before we move on to the bond pricing phase. And so if there are any changes to our ability to have financing on hand for contract award, we will let your council know. I think regardless, by that point, we will be at a point where the funding is largely secured. We should have a bond purchase agreement in place, but just wanted to put it on your radar that we're working through sort of an unanticipated difficulty with getting the title report done. We don't expect that there will be issues. The city has owned the Marsh Street parking structure for a very long time, but just did want to put that on your radar in case for some reason by September 17th we don't actually have a pile of money in our hand to award the contract. We will should still be able to move forward with contract award on that date, but may need to line up a little bit more financing after that date. So again, the actions before your council tonight are to approve two separate resolutions, one as the city council and a separate resolution as the San Luis Obispo Public Financing Authority Board of Directors. And I wanted, before we move on to questions and deliberation, to note that there are two minor administrative corrections to the language in the resolutions. The highlighted 4% in each resolution should actually be 0.4%. So wanted to put that on your radar before you take action. And with that concludes the presentation. I'm on hand to answer questions, as are our advisors from PFM and ORIC, and then Public Works is here as well if there are any questions specific to the parking structure itself.
Thank you so much. And this is a lot of very heavily detailed information, and I really appreciate also the couple of slides that you've added in that I know that Councilmember Shoresman and I were talking about, so that was perfectly visual. Thank you. Councilmember Shoresman.
Yeah, thank you for the report. And again, as the mayor said, thanks for including some of the things that we had questions about yesterday. Just a couple follow-up questions on the point about that you're asking basically for approval to go forward with a not to exceed amount of $50 million in bonds, and that in the table that you showed earlier in the slideshow, it showed that the phase 2 debt financing was $47 million or anticipated to be $47 million. So I guess what I'm wondering is how is it decided, at what point do we need to decide how much we actually need and how much money worth of bonds are actually sold?
So Sarah or Trish may want to weigh in on this one as well. But I mean, at this point, we have a good sense of what we need. It's just a question of how much it's going to cost us to repay it based on interest rates and how the debt is actually structured. We want to leave some room for any investor preferences on how the debt is structured, and that can affect price overall. And so we'll figure that out at the point when we get to that point and we're having those conversations.
Okay, so that's where the wiggle room is really. It's not on how much we intend to gain, it's on the particulars of the arrangement when it actually happens.
And I think, if Trish or Sarah, if you want to chime in here, I think, there's a lot at play here. You'll notice that there was a $6 million contingency. And I'll use LOVR, for example. We ended up not spending all of the contingency. And so there were some restrictions on what we could do with that unspent contingency. So you can use, for example, that contingency, which is one of the preferred ways, is pay down the bonds. So there's lots of different mechanisms, but I'll probably let Sarah or Trish, weigh in on that. We're asking for the authority up to that amount. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we'll be, have a strict accounting of how the proceeds are used, and then we'll report back to the council at the end. In the case of LOVR, what we ended up doing is, because there was so much diverted traffic, one of the permissible uses, we ended up using some of the funding to repair a bunch of the damaged roadways because there was so much high traffic on Madonna, for example, because of LOVR being impacted. So those are the kind of the flexibility we need, moving forward. But I'll let Sarah and Trish see if they have anything that they want to add.
Sure. Just if you can hear me okay? Yeah. Okay, great.
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Emily, could we go, or whoever is in charge of the slides, could we go to the sources and uses slide again? And this will just to underscore a point that you made. So as both Emily and Derek had noted, the determination of exactly how many bonds will be sold will in fact be made at the time that we enter the market and then enter into sell the bond, offer the bonds to investors, and receive their orders for the bonds, and then enter into the bond purchase agreement with Raymond James, who's the underwriter. So this, as you can see at the bottom of this table, the uses are shown as the project fund, which, as noted earlier in the slide presentation, is sized around a number of $47 million to go to the parking garage construction. And then the row down below that is the refunding escrow, which is essentially how much we need to have on hand to pay off the outstanding 2012 bonds. The sources at the top show you currently the estimate is that we would issue approximately 47.6 million, 47.585 million of bonds to satisfy those needs. The other source that you'll see there that's significant is about $1.96 million of what's called net premium. And that goes to this issue of investor preference and how we will ultimately sort of structure the bonds themselves, whether they are what's called premium bonds, where the investor's paying you a bit more than 100 cents on the dollar, or bonds that are issued at par, which is the face value of the bond, 100 cents on the dollar, or at a discount where they pay you maybe 96 cents on the dollar. So that basically that $1.96 million source that we are reflecting as what the current market would be, could be something different at the time we enter the market. And that's why we need this additional flexibility up to the $50 million not to exceed par amount.
Thank you for going through that slide, especially because you went through a lot of pretty detailed slides and you went through them pretty quick. So thank you for going back through that.
Certainly.
Councilmember Francis.
Yeah, since we're on this slide, one of the questions I had during our meeting yesterday was about the nature of the debt service savings from the consolidation of the 2012 bond on the Damon Garcia. And on this slide, I know you mentioned it earlier, the bond reserve fund, but I thought you did a really excellent job yesterday explaining the need for that bond reserve fund and how the consolidation would help to free that money. And that's not something that then would have to be in place for the new bond. And I was
Sure.
hoping maybe you could explain that again.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. So the row at the top under the sources that's labeled 2012 Bonds Reserve Fund shows a current amount on hand with the bond trustee of $405,600. And that was the reserve fund that was established at the time the 2012 bonds were issued. And it acts as similar to, when you're renting an apartment and you need to put down a month's rent as a security deposit. So it's a very similar type of arrangement here. That was conventional at the time these bonds in 2012 were issued, even for highly rated cities like San Luis Obispo. The market has kind of evolved away from requiring that type of a security deposit or reserve fund or debt service reserve fund, or the terms that we use in the municipal bond market. And so investors no longer expect or require that, and the rating agencies also do not expect or require that. And so as you'll see, there's not a corresponding use in the bottom of the table for funding a new reserve fund. So one of the benefits of this refinancing is that it will free up that reserve fund that can be used to reduce the amount of bonds that have to be issued to refinance the 2012 bonds that are outstanding.
Thank you for that eloquent explanation.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure.
Thank you. Any other questions? I just have one more, and it's kind of similar to Councilmember Francis of yesterday when you shared about the the Damon Garcia area, and if we get the 2012 bonds and sell those, how it will not harm the potential future of the Prado infrastructure. So if you wanted to share about that, that'd be great.
Emily, did you want to speak to that, or would you like me to?
Yeah, it's finance, definitely.
Yeah, so I think this is the answer I provided yesterday. The Prado interchange and then the throughput up to Broad is still very much under construction. So I don't know that, we have an answer on that quite yet. I think there's still quite a bit more work to be done, but the answer is that, unencumbering Damon Garcia, assuming that it doesn't get encumbered immediately for another issuance, actually provides more opportunity for what's due with that area, right? Because we don't have to maintain it for potential, of a default on the 2012 series bonds. So freeing it up actually provides more flexibility should that be needed for what that project, the Prado project, actually looks like.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that. And then lastly, I know that we are taking money out of the general fund to be able to do this, and having the parking fund pay it back. If the parking fund does not actually end up making the revenue that we expect, the forecast revenue, then what happens? Since we're supposed to kind of run as an enterprise, separate funds.
Yeah, so our plan at this point is to pay the debt service directly out of the parking fund. If something were to happen, we would need to have some conversation, but one of the things we've talked about, whether it's a lack of parking revenue or project cost overruns, I think, we've got a couple different options that we could choose from. One would be to look at deferring or canceling other projects projects in the CIP using general funds or capital outlay, funded through capital outlay, we could redirect those to this project. I don't think that we would ever get to the point where there would be an operating budget discussion, but we do have a pretty robust CIP and potentially some opportunity if we were really in that position to take from other projects. The last thing we want to do is issue debt, not be able to repay it. That's going to be much more costly than delaying progress on other projects that are currently in the adopted CIP.
Great, thank you so much. Well, if no other questions, we have a public comment, I believe.
Yes, Jessica Goswick.
We can all hear. Oh, there we go. Okay. Hello, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Jessica Goswick. I'm an architect and a lecturer in the architecture department at Cal Poly, and I've lived in SLO for nearly a decade. I'm here today to ask the council to reconsider the Cultural Arts District parking structure. I know this project has been in the works for 20 years, and I know that I'm late to the party, but I also know that so much in our world and in our community has changed within those years. Our city's 2023 to 2025 Access and Parking Management Plan confirms what many of us in SLO already know. To quote, overall parking occupancy in the downtown area is almost always well below the 85% occupancy threshold recognized by parking management as a best practice utilization rate, end quote. We have enough parking. In fact, we occasionally have too much parking for parking revenue to cover the expenses of maintenance. Which brings me to my second point. Parking structures cost an astronomical amount. Financially, environmentally, and socially. Financially, on the agenda today is a number not to exceed $50 million, which, to put into scale, is similar to average construction costs we see to build around 100 affordable housing units in this area. This is not an insignificant number. Environmentally, concrete absorbs heat during the day and releases it at night, contributing to rising temperatures. It increases impervious area, increasing stormwater runoff and potential floods. Additionally, concrete is the most carbon-intensive building material, meaning that the carbon emissions from construction will contribute greatly to global warming today and encourage a continued car-centric culture in the future. Building construction and transportation are the two largest sources of carbon emissions in the world, and this project will contribute to both. And finally, socially, this structure takes away valuable downtown land from the community and deprives it of any alternative, whether that be housing, urban cooling, business, education, etc. This parking structure has come up in many, many conversations with my friends and neighbors. Young people especially are disappointed to see the project begin, especially considering all the costs and all that has changed in 20 years. I again urge you to reconsider and think about if this is really in line with our city's goals for carbon neutrality, placemaking, and community building. If the parking structure must continue, I encourage you all to look into the construction and operations of the structure and consider who benefits. How can we use it to make it more affordable to live downtown? How can we minimize its impact on rising temperatures and water flows? How can we aid in community making, perhaps through ground floor services, more EV charging, public transportation funding, or shared parking for affordable housing downtown? In conclusion, in 20 years, how will we feel about the interest we will still be paying on this parking structure? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other public comment?
No, that was it.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if we'd like to have Mr. Horn kind of respond on some of the public comment, knowing that we have a lot of what was mentioned in the speaker's comments.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Thank you. And the speaker had a lot of great comments and a lot of things that this council has grappled with over the I would say 10-year, but it's been more like a 20-year thing. So yeah, do we need more parking downtown? We've taken in parking in lieu of fees. We've managed development to provide more density in downtown by allowing folks to not actually provide the parking that's necessary for those developments. That allows us more density, more people downtown. But this project addresses some of that. So there's a parking deficit that's needed downtown. So we're trying to address that. Secondarily is the time it takes to actually implement a project like this. We can't wait to a point in time where we might, where our community members might believe that we have a parking crisis downtown. I think you all might have been around for prior to COVID. We were in a place where we didn't have enough parking downtown, and that was thought to be a negative impact on business. So we want to make sure we're accomplishing that. And then third is the site itself. It's more than just a parking structure. So the parking structure is a component of it that has, you know, a viewing deck and a lot of electrical vehicle charging and a lot of electrical vehicle capable charging, but also it has a cultural center with the Slow Rep Theater in there. And then future, there's an opportunity for housing the Liner building on the side of it. So it really is a bit of the anchor of that redevelopment of a cultural arts district structure area. Derek, are there any other points that we need to focus on?
I would just want to add, Madam Mayor, to the speaker's comments is, you know, we recognize that concrete is a, you know, significant contributor to greenhouse gases. And, you know, part of our strategy is, as a city, is to become carbon neutral for city operations by 2030 and as a community by 2035. So there is this push-pull, and I think that I hope that if we ever have to build another parking garage, that we've made a lot of progress on our material sciences and have better ways for embodying carbon in concrete. There, we are on the you know, on the edge of some really emerging technologies where we can embody and actually capture carbon in concrete. We're not quite there yet. Hear the speaker loud and clear, not insensitive to it, and, you know, have other efforts underway to address some of those aspects.
Great, thank you both. Vice Mayor Marks.
Thank you. Another factor is that during the approval process for the hotel, Slow Hotel and Hotel Sarah, the EIR did on each of those did a parking analysis, and at that time the city had committed to have built the fourth parking structure at the same time that these hotels opened, in order to compensate for the fact that we were taking away surface parking at that time. And guess what? That didn't happen. So we just went ahead and built the hotels, or allowed the hotels to be built anyway. So we have an obligation that has to do with the EIRs that were that we approved at that time to carry on with it. So if we're in the deliberation phase right now, I think it's important to continue with our plan to build this parking structure. I'm not sure about the design, how far we've gotten with that, but when it came to the design of the parking structure that's across the street from City Hall, we made sure that the angle of the floors in the parking structure, the different levels, was such that it could be converted to other uses in the future if it turned out that we did not need the much parking in that particular space. And I'm not sure if we're anywhere near the design phase. It's probably too far gone at this point. But if it turned out that we actually need less parking in structures, there is that possibility to extend probably more city department usage in the existing parking structure that's across the street on Palm. So at any rate, I feel very strongly that we need to go forward I didn't ask any questions of staff or our experts because I feel that the staff report was very well done, and in our one-on-one sessions, my questions were answered. And I think it's really important that the public understands that the money to repay the bonds will be coming from the parking fund, and that's why we've had to raise the rates. So that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you. Councilmember Shorsman.
Yeah, I just want to, I guess, emphasize some of the things that our city manager said and some of the things that our public works director said too. I hear your comments in a very heartfelt way. We received some similar comments via email about just sort of the need for parking in general. And I think we can build this structure. Well, we've already committed to building this structure. And quite frankly, I was late to this party too, only being on council for a few years now. This has been in motion for a very long time. I think we can build this structure and at the same time be sincere and true to our goals around mode share and improving the access for bikes and peds and use of public transportation. And I think we can use this structure, strangely, to help us get closer in some of those goals, as well as some of our downtown housing goals. This structure not only will be something that will help us grow our downtown activities and improve economic circumstances for the businesses that are downtown, including the hotels that Vice Mayor Marks mentioned, but we can't forget about the Slow Rep Theater. That's a big component of that. It's going to bring a lot of people downtown. And I hope it brings a lot of people downtown that will walk and take public transit and ride their bikes as well. We also can't forget about the additional density, hopefully, more people living downtown. We want to encourage people to live downtown. And if some do choose to have cars, then this might be a place that they can put their cars if they don't have parking available where they live. So I'll be supporting this at the same time that I really look forward to continuing to find ways for parking in general to help support our other mode share goals.
Thank you, Councilmember Pease.
Thank you. I appreciate the comments and questions of my colleagues and all the staff time and consultant time for answering the questions. I will be supporting the item. I echo the comments and won't spend time and just, that we've all grappled with building this huge structure and by working through it and going, okay, what are the options to really feel like this is the appropriate investment for our community. It really is in terms of arts and culture, in terms of our economy, but also our sustainability goals in tying together for the density and the transportation multimodal. Could always talk more about that, but in the meantime, I'm supportive of the bond issuance and grateful for all the work.
Thank you so much. And I echo a lot of what everyone has said. I would just add a few additional items. I think as we look at was it 46 spots for electric vehicles? I mean, if 41, thank you. I think always if there's ways to increase that would be wonderful for the future, but I know that's a whole nother world. I'm not trying to get into design and engineering. I'm just throwing that out there. I think also, as I just want to really emphasize again, the business help that this does. I mean, for the businesses on that end of the city, we have had challenges for so long around parking and the ability to get people to those businesses. And so that's a really big passion of mine, is to be able to have businesses succeed in our community and stay in our community. And I was concerned around the Damon Garcia at first, and so I just, again, thank you for that, because we've had so much plans for that for such a long time, even longer than this, so that just really kind of concerned me. I also think about construction, and it never gets cheaper, as we've seen that. I don't think it's going to get cheaper any time in the future, so I also look at that as far as how, with our bonds and what we're looking at doing right now. And the other thing that, people have asked me, self-driving cars, or people are going to be driving less cars, or whatever it might be. And, I look at it as there's, in bigger cities, sometimes you don't need to use your car that much. And you walk around, you bike around, but then that time you want to go to Costco, or you want to go out of the city and you need your car, this is an ability to have like that kind of rental space if we had to get that far along and we had really self-driving cars. The other thing I look at is going different places that the ride share sometimes uses a parking garage as the staging space instead of curbs. And so I think that's also another potential opportunity. So I think there's opportunities in the future if we do get to the point that we have less people in cars, which would be wonderful. I think this still has opportunities for the future. So as I look at this, I think we're keeping way below that 15%. So that makes me feel as we're being responsible with taxpayers' money. And I'm really just thrilled about our AA rating as well. That's amazing. And love that our raters got to actually come to the community and experience it. So that was awesome. So I think that's all I'll have to say about that. But yes, I also support this as is. We have a motion. Oh, sorry, City Manager Johnson has something to say.
I just wanted to make it clear for the record that 41 spaces is the initial energized number of spaces. We've designed it so that 100% of the spaces are EV capable. So we've got the plumbing and the infrastructure ready. And so we spent a lot of time with a consultant looking at the uptake of electric vehicles, what was the right investment, wanting not to overinvest in perhaps a, beta technology that later we need VHS, 10 years from now. And so that's why we've been careful about how we're phasing that in that investment.
That's great. Thanks for that context. Appreciate that. Vice Mayor Marks.
Well, I'd like to move the staff recommendation as the city council, and then we have to also.
We'll worry about that after. So is there a second for the city council of the motion? Yeah, we're acting as the city council right now.
Right.
And Vice Mayor Marks has made a motion to accept the staff recommendation. Councilmember Pease.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any other comment before we move forward? All right, roll call, please.
Councilmember Marks?
Yes.
Councilmember Pease?
Yes.
Councilmember Francis?
Yes.
Councilmember Shoresman?
Yes.
Mayor Stewart?
Yes, and the motion passes 5-0 as action of the city council. Vice Mayor Marks.
Then I would like to, tell me, what is the name of the entity that we are now again? Okay, now as the Public Financing Authority Board of Directors, I would like to move the staff recommendation.
Great, thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Shoresman.
I'll second it.
Wonderful, thank you. Can we have roll call, please?
Vice Mayor Marks?
Yes.
Councilmember Shoresman?
Yes.
Councilmember Francis?
Yes.
Councilmember Pease?
Yes.
Mayor Stewart?
Yes, and the motion passes 5-0. Thank you so much, Sarah and Trish, and thank you, Emily, for all the hard work. We appreciate it.
And thank you, our experts from afar. You really helped us out.
And now moving forward to the very light part of the the agenda, which is liaison reports and communications. Does anyone have anything? Councilmember Pease.
Sure, just a couple of quick ones. First two, SlowCog related. So we are getting word from Losan, which runs the Pacific Surfliner that we're members of, and their ridership from this last weekend, 24,000 rides, is it's at 85% of pre-pandemic levels. So just been continuing to climb on the train service. So get out and ride the train. And also at that SlowCog meeting and then subsequently at the Board of Supervisors meeting, the housing infrastructure plan was adopted, we didn't feel like plan wording was that it was far enough along to actually call it a plan, so we changed it to housing infrastructure framework. And the list of 80 projects, we took out all of the prioritization of those projects. And so I think we just recognize that it's so nuanced about how to prioritize. So, but the framework is there and available. And then finally, it seems like a gazillion years ago, but just after just before the break, we did host the Mexican consulate, the new consul Ricardo Santana Velasquez. So Ambassador Santana came, and Chief Scott was there, as was our DEI department, and a whole bunch from San Luis Coastal, and or the whole school, countywide school districts, and just a great program. Great to welcome him as a resource out from Oxnard.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And did you want to announce anything about Fiesta? No? Okay. All right. Thank you. Councilmember Schwarzman.
Yeah, so last week I had the pleasure of attending a pinning ceremony for 2 of our new police officers. Really exciting to meet them both, and then also celebrate the reclassification of our 2 captains into deputy chief positions. So again, really nice to meet the new officers and their families, and celebrate that landmark promotion there. And then we also had our Zone 9 committee meeting. I mentioned that they are moving along on the plans for the Mid-Higuera bypass that I mentioned earlier. Still, most of the permitting has been done. There's still some work to do on getting some of the easements. So as Matt mentioned earlier, it's going to be a little while still, definitely not before this next storm season, maybe hopefully before the following storm season. They are also going to be working on some, I'll have to talk to our fire folks about this and coordinating maybe with them. They want to do some more storm preparedness activities in this upcoming fall to help people, again, learn about floodgates and proper use of that, and planning for sandbagging and that sort of thing. And then also attended for Councilmember Pease the Downtown SLO board meeting this last week, and so it was nice to get a chance to visit with that group and see what they're doing as well.
That's great. Thank you. Vice Mayor Marks.
Thank you. Yes, well, on our European trip, I visited the mayor of the city of Kehl, K-E-H-L, in Germany, and he was quite interested in San Luis Obispo. He's actually been here as a tourist. I just to give you a sense of how different it is, he's got 26 council members. Yeah, 26, not just 5. You can imagine Mayor Stewart trying to herd those cats, and they're all kind of part of the German parliament. I do not understand how it all works, but his background, his father and mother are the people who are doing the reunification and reconciliation project in the village of Bodersweier that my husband's ancestors came from. So it was quite interesting, and Kehl wants to be carbon neutral by a certain year, and they're trying to reduce the number of cars, and what do they do about solid waste, and should they spend all this money to build a civic swimming pool is what they're after. But anyway, it was incredible how many of our concerns were similar. So I'll send you all pictures of the city hall if you want. It was very beautiful. So that's all I have. I was on vacation, so.
That's awesome. Thank you. 26 would be a lot, that's for sure.
Can you imagine?
No. I think Fresno has 9. I don't know. As Michelle was Councilmember Schwarzman was on vacation. I went to the Homeless Services Oversight Committee, the HSOC, and you know, it's really amazing sometimes when you stop and think about all the amazing work that's being done in the entire county. And, Echo was sharing about their 100 people they have housed, and Grover's Cabins for Change was talking about their 18 people they have housed, and Capslo was sharing about their 38 people they have housed. And it's just, while we're talking about where do we have safe parking, what do we do, there's still a lot of good work being done in the midst, and we have to kind of remember that at the same time. And the nice person shared from Morro Bay about what they're doing, and it was great to talk about, People's Kitchen and many other volunteers that were coming through on HSOC and always providing good nutritional food for people. We also got to have the electric bus ribbon cutting, so that was really fun. I didn't get to actually ride on it because I had to get back to work, but it was really, really neat to see. And then the Cracking the Code, got to be on a panel with Timmy Tway, our new director of community development director, and that was a lot of fun, just really kind of sharing about how the whole community can get to understand the planning a little bit more and the details a little bit more, and then also what does that mean for a layperson like myself, where trying to help guide people to get to the right departments and get the right access they need for the city. And then on Thursday of last week, I got to go to the Central Coast Black Leaders Roundtable. And this is the Ventura County, Santa Barbara County, and SLO County. I was the only SLO County rep, and the city paid for me to be able to go. It was really interesting to see what everyone's trying to do with diversity and how do we help amplify the good work that's being done, but at the same time, everyone's doing it in these 3 counties with less than 2% of Black people. So there's really a difficult time of trying to amplify the work and at the same time not have the people to do it. And so just really talking about allies and how important that is, and how do we work together to be able to, raise all boats. So it was a really good conversation, really around economic success for people, and how do we do that here as well. So it'll be interesting conversations, and we'll continue to be working together and hopefully host in SLO County for the next meeting or 2. So that's all that I have. We will go ahead and meet here on September 5th at 5:30 p.m. See you next time.